and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will now take the roll call of the board. Trustee Ruff,
Present.
Vice Chair Moser,
Present.
Trustee Jacks,
Present.
Trustee Rodriguez,
Present.
and President Ann Silver. We will now begin public comment. There is a 3-minute time limit per person. No discussion or action by the board may be taken upon any matter raised under this public comment section until the matter has been specifically included on an agenda. I don't have a list of public comment speakers.
How do we get that? Yeah.
We have a list of individuals who've registered for public comment. We will call them in order of sign up. If when you come to the podium, you would remember to state your name for the record before you speak. Thank you. First, we have Drew Rebar.
Good morning, Drew Rebar for the record. Although that we know that the Washoe County Library System has a history of modifying the record to their liking. Anyways, I'm a candidate for Nevada Assembly District 40. And I want to give my thanks to the Washoe County Library for giving me some points to run on in my election. Liberty, conservatism, fiscally responsible. All of the things that the Washoe County Library has not been good at. I am credited or blamed, depending on your perspective, for ending the drag queen story time that the former library director and assistant director and Debbie Steers and all those people put on. The emails are really, really interesting. There's an email between ex-director Scott and I think that's her name, Beat Weinert, about how we don't need as much security if we can just keep the people out that we don't like. Smiling over there, Mr. Kaplan. Why did you guys do this? Why did you guys let somebody into our government to lead a government agency that wanted to keep certain members of the public out? I mean, we all sit up there and complain about banning books. We don't want to ban any books. We just want to ban the people that don't like our ideas because we don't want to listen to their ideas. So I sincerely hope, although I have very little faith, that y'all will hire somebody that's middle of the road, not left, not right, but somebody that just wants to serve all of the people. Because our libraries have become a dumping ground for the homeless. You walk into the libraries in the middle of the day. I guess that's why Reno Library can only be open Monday through Fridays. That's when it really helps the homeless the most. And really what I read is that's when you can only get the security in there that you need for that library because of all the homeless stuff that's going on there with the drug addicts. Our society has failed. If you think about what's happened in our society as a whole, just beyond the library, 30 years ago, I was in my 20s and I could buy a house. My friends could buy houses. Today, what the bureaucrats and the system have done to the people, whether you're on the left or the right, is you got to wait until you're in your early 40s to consider buying your first home now, statistically. So in the last 30 years, what have the bureaucrats that have been running the government done to we the people so that we can't afford to live our lives? Made DEI a thing instead of liberty and equality? Ejected people from public spaces because you don't like their views. Tried to call the police on them because anyways, you have a good day. Drew Rebar.
Thank you, Mr. Rebar. Mr. Cliff Nellis.
Is that thing working? No. Greetings, board members. Beautiful day today. I hear that you're going to be selecting a new director possibly today. I heard that there were 20 candidates and I only see 4 being considered here. I sent an email to all of you guys. I don't know if you read it, but there's some issues that are going on with the library director and have been for a long time. Mr. Scott was appointed like 15 years ago. He's so radical that Berkeley kicked him out, you know. And we've had him for 15 years, appointing nothing but people of his own persuasion, I believe, to every post in the library. So all of the librarians are LGBs. I don't believe there is such a thing as a T. That's why I left it off there. But in the email I sent you, I expressed these concerns that we have, you know, Debbie Steers, who is a radical leftist, and a very nice person, like her, but she's picking the books for the library. Sean Sullivan at the last library meeting said, "Oh, we need an ALA approved director." Well, you guys know ALA is a Marxist organization? We don't need Marxists and we don't need sex perverts running our libraries. We need to solve this situation. And really what we need to do is trash can the whole thing and start over with the private contractor running our libraries. That way we can fire all these people because they're brainwashing our kids. And I'm here for the children. And we got obscenity in the libraries. I've been talking to these guys about this stuff. This is absolute obscenity. It's a felony, and they're pushing it on the children. And we don't want to ban books. We just wanted to put them in the adult section. But you guys know what that means. If they're taken out in the public libraries, out of the children's section, they have to be taken out of the 108 school libraries. And we know that the Marxist teachers that were brainwashed in our education system are assigning those books to be read, just like when I was a kid. They assigned Aldous Huxley's Brave New World to brainwash me. You know, and we're tired of it. We're not putting up with it. You know, I hope you guys can look at all 20 candidates, not just these 4. I don't know who these 4 are. Some of them might be good, some of them might not. But we need someone, like Mr. Rebar said, we need someone who's balanced. We're sick of this crap. I don't want my children or the children of my community to be Marxist. And I think we got a lot of people on our side too, like the whole Hispanic community. Because none of them are Marxists that I know of.
Thank you, sir. Lois Barton.
Good morning. My name is Lois Barton, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. I've been a resident of Reno since 2011, when I moved here with my family. Sierra View is my home library, but I have frequented several libraries in the metro area to attend story hours and events with my grandson when he was small. At each library, the staff have been all warm and welcoming, and the services provided have been second to none. My husband went back to school for his master's in library science and spent many years in his second career as a reference librarian. I can attest to the hard work and dedication required to complete a master's degree in library science and then to commit to working with the public and help people from all walks of life access resources they need, resources that will open doors, resources that can at times be considered life expanding. For the new library director, I commend you for selecting 4 finalists, all of whom have received their master's degrees in library and information studies from an ALA, American Library Association accredited program. In my experience, libraries are a safe space to learn and explore and create connection and community. Reno's libraries provide opportunities for so many of us, from babies to seniors. And as evidenced by today's 110,000 donation from the Friends of Washoe County Library, there is a groundswell of support in our community for continuation of the services provided by our libraries. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Arnie Morens.
Good morning. My name is Arnie Maurens. I worked in the Washoe County Library System for 20 years, and I had the privilege of serving as director for the last 8 of those years from 2008 to 2015. You have an opportunity that not many library boards get, and that's to hire a new director and thereby set a new course for the library system. The candidates you'll be interviewing today all appear to be well qualified. And you all no doubt have specific qualities and skills that you'll be looking for as you conduct your interviews and deliberate about the candidates. I would ask you to consider which of those candidates you believe will do the best job in the following areas. 1, articulating a clear vision for the future viability and success of the library system and carrying out that vision. 2, ensuring that our libraries are a valuable resource for everyone and not just for those who may have the loudest voices. Number 3, advocating on behalf of the library system and the value that it provides to the community. And 4, being an effective and transparent steward of the library system's financial and human resources. Selecting the candidate who will make the best director is a difficult task, but an extremely important one. I know that you'll give it the focus and consideration that it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy Tibbet.
We get the overhead? Is that available?
There is no overhead available today.
Okay, thank you. Sandy Tibbet for the record. The decision to skip a community survey was a huge mistake. How could gathering real feedback from the people who actually use these libraries not be beneficial? The chair reportedly questioned if a survey would be truly beneficial based on the type of responses which may come in. That's presumptuous. Dismissing potential input upfront shows a lack of trust in the Washoe County residents. Community members are the primary stakeholders here, more than branch managers, trustees, or the assistant county manager. The process handed control over to the consulting firm to narrow 30 applicants to 12, based solely on qualifications and screening interviews, with no meet and greet or public input before selecting the final 4. Shame on you. No transparency, no community voice in who advanced. It's disheartening that the board, especially those with terms ending soon, didn't insist on broader engagement. This feels like the chair and vice chair abdicated oversight to CPS HR, letting outsiders decide without meaningful community or full board involvement. All 4 finalists are registered Democrats, and 3 list she, her pronouns on their LinkedIn profiles. Was the ideal criteria to be a Democrat with pronouns? Was that it? This is biased and unbalanced, especially when 3 progressive-leaning candidates make the 4th look moderate by comparison. Probably done by design, because anyone who displays pronouns in a professional context clearly raises red flags about their seriousness for a public leadership role, making the moderate Democrat the more reasonable choice for a conservative like me. So with that said, I would like to see a trustee make a motion today to bring all 12 screen candidates back for a stakeholder meet and greet that includes community, full board, and branch manager input to restore some transparency and balance to the recruitment process. Your decisions have silenced us. The community, the residents who use and fund these libraries deserve a real voice in the selection process. But that motion most likely will not happen. So I'm going to move forward by putting on record my reluctant support for Tammy Westergaard. My concern is another version of Jeff Scott's situation given her local ties. But after some extensive research, her vision appears to align with what I value for our community. I like that she focuses on workforce development, career navigation, job training through libraries, statewide tools like Nevada Career Explorer, and economic collaboration.
She appears to be embedded in the economic development to help people access better jobs and wage growth instead of trying to indoctrinate our kids with social ideologies. She has positioned libraries to be hubs for real skills, helping students build career pathways while improving wages and lives for people of all ages. I do support that, and she doesn't have the pronouns.
Thank you. Eileen Eklund.
Good morning, trustees. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. For the record, my name is Eileen Eklund. First, I'd just like to say how happy I am that we're finally making progress toward hiring a new director for our Washoe library system. It's been a long time coming, and I'm hoping that this will be the first step in providing some needed stability for library staff and the system as a whole. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to meet your candidates as you interview them. I'm pleased that the trustees have what seems like a very solid, well-qualified group of finalists to choose from. I would like the candidates for this position to know that there's a large and dedicated community of people here in Washoe County who are passionate about our libraries. We love them for their wealth of information, resources, and services, which so many of us rely on, but also for the community that they provide. The libraries are spaces where all of our neighbors are welcome, places where we can come together to learn, imagine, create, and connect. We firmly believe that libraries are essential to the quality of life in our community, and we will do everything in our power to support them. Whoever the trustees choose to lead our library system, we will stand strongly behind them as long as they share our love for libraries and our commitment to defending the public service values inherent in the concept of public library systems. Make no mistake, our Washoe County libraries face some steep challenges, not least of which is a serious shortage in future funding. We need more library staff, more resources, more investment in our collections and facilities, all in an era of severe budget constraints. Tackling that issue will take a lot of hard work, not a little ingenuity, and we stand ready to help wherever and however we can. Another challenge has been repeated attempts to undermine our libraries for various reasons. Some question the library's relevance in today's digital world or belittle their cost-free model in an era of pay-per-view, cutthroat business practices. Others challenge the library's commitment to inclusiveness. We strongly believe that libraries are an essential public resource that must be made free and welcoming to all in our community. With so many of our country's critical public sector services under attack, we believe it has never been more important to stand up and defend our libraries. We look forward to welcoming a new library director to Washoe County and are eager to support their efforts to make our library system the best that it can be. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Judith Simon.
Thank you, trustees. My name is Judith Simon, and I served on the Washoe County Library Board from 2006 to 2010 or so, I believe it was, with Nancy Cummings as the director, followed by Arnie Morans, who you just heard speak. And I think that I was led to become a trustee because when I first moved to Nevada in 2000, I entered that library and it was a welcoming, friendly place. And that led me to want to provide that volunteer service that all of you are providing today. I think you have a very critical task in front of you. I did review the applicants. They looked very fine to me, and I don't see that you as volunteers need to probably look any farther. But I think that we need to, after the issues that have arisen with some very vocal members of the community, I think that we need to step back and make our libraries what they were, which is a lifeline for those who find themselves in dire straits, either through unemployment or social upheaval. Continue to support programs for children, seniors, and working people, and become a community center where nothing is offered for sale or for admission, because it is a place that everyone can come and be heard. I think the recent almost national effort to ban books needs to be stopped and explained to the public in a way they can understand. I think the current staff has done a very good job of that. But to have a place that is welcoming to all, meanwhile, giving parents the right to watch what their children are reading and experiencing through our other collections. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Cummings Schmidt.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm Nancy Cummings Schmidt. I was the library director from 1995 to 2008. Today, you will be engaged in one of the most important responsibilities a library board can have, perhaps the most important, and that is selecting the best possible candidate to become the next Washoe County Library Director. In my 27 years as a library director, one of the most essential keys to a thriving library system is the relationship between the board and the director. Mutual trust, respect, and support are the necessary ingredients to make that happen. A close working relationship is what supports the staff and reassures the community that the library is in good hands. And speaking of staff, whoever you choose today will be the lucky one that inherits a remarkable, resilient, dedicated library staff. Lastly, I want to thank each of you for staying the course. It has not been the smoothest trip of late. And hopefully, your decision today will help us chart a new course for our library staff, and our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce Parks.
Good morning, trustees. Bruce Parks for the record. I'd like to share a couple thoughts with you as a community member. First of all, what we don't want in a library director, we don't want a director that's openly antagonistic to the trustees, to this board. We don't want a library director that believes the ALA is the end-all be-all. It's an organization that at one time the head said that our libraries need to be socialist organizing centers. We don't want a library director that gives preferential treatment to certain segments of our community. We want a library director that understands they have to be responsive to the entire community. We don't want a library director that ignores the majority opinions of the community. And of course, we do not want a library director that does not have a sound moral compass. We do want a library director that is responsive to the community, one that is apolitical, one that will work with the trustees. Even though your process that you're going to follow today is flawed in many aspects, you didn't get to see all the applications. You have no idea if any of the references were contacted and what questions were asked of those references. This entire process needs to be examined. Personally, if I was sitting where you're at, my first motion would be that we not select based on the limited, anemic list of people that we have to choose from and the limited information available. I've been fighting with this library board since 2018. There's nobody sitting behind me that has more experience with what goes on in our library system. Fortunately, we now have a board of trustees that actually takes their responsibilities seriously, and I greatly appreciate that. Well, most of them. Anyway, do the right thing for our community here today. Ask the hard questions. I don't believe, again, with the anemic list that you have in front of you to choose from, that you can make the right decision for our community. But I implore you to understand the importance of that. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Naseem Jamnia for the record. I hope the board will allow me to welcome the candidates for our director position. I'm not originally from Washoe County, but I've called it my home for the past 9 years. And the library has been such an important cornerstone to my life here and the lives of thousands and more of Washoe County residents. I don't need to tell any of you that across the country, school and public libraries have been under attack. Book challenges have soared across the nation. Library funding has been cut and libraries are fighting privatization. There are several lawsuits around libraries and the right to read. Washoe County is no stranger to these challenges. We have our own history of lost funding, book challenges, and failed leadership. Yet throughout all of this, there have been people who love the library banding together to fight on behalf of it. We are the ones alongside library workers defending the freedom to read and write, the freedom of information, and the freedom for library workers and patrons alike to feel safe, supported, included, and represented inside library walls. No matter how many people come to these meetings determined to restrict what people can read, argue that the library does not deserve uninterrupted funding to do its important work, and attack library administration and staff, there are so many more of us who appreciate what the library does and what it represents. The public library is one of, if not the last third space in this country. Library staff should not have to be a panacea to all that ails our society, yet it has become that for the last many years. Most of all, funded, unrestricted, and above all, public libraries are a cornerstone of a functioning democracy. My understanding is that the trustees are allowed only to ask a certain standard set of questions for our candidates. I would ask then for candidates to address, as relevant, how they will not capitulate to the voices that seek to destroy what the public library stands for. How will you defend our library from these attacks? How will you make sure our collections continue to represent the vast breadth of the human experience and interests? And yes, this includes books by people we disagree with, even those with pseudoscience, if our residents request them, which many of them do. How will you make sure the library staff feel safe, supported, and respected, and protect them against the attacks that happen at these and other meetings, as we've already seen? What will you do to make sure our libraries don't just survive, but thrive despite all of these negative forces at work? You won't be alone in this, and I look forward to working with and supporting our next director. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate Salim.
Good morning, Kate Salim for the record. I want to disclose that I am a Washoe County employee and I do not work for the Washoe County Library System, and I am here on my own personal time. I'm thrilled to be here for the hiring of a new director. They will find a library system filled with dedicated staff and a diverse community that deeply supports them. I am here today to ask for transparency. Unfortunately, there is a history of procedural opacity that concerns me with this board. First, the logistics of this meeting. Typically, these meetings are held on Wednesday evenings at 5:30 p.m. to allow for public access. In May 2024, when a meeting was moved to 10 a.m., board members expressed frustration over the time change. Why is it now acceptable to hold this meeting at 8:30 a.m. on a Monday in the BCC chambers? This move limits the very public participation we should be encouraging during a director search. Second, I call on all board members to disclose any personal or professional relationships with the candidates and recuse themselves where appropriate. We have seen a pattern of non-disclosure with this board, unfortunately. In April 2024, the then chair failed to disclose a personal connection via a homeschooling co-op with an individual speaking on book challenges. In August 2024, a professional relationship through the Reno-Sparks Chamber of Commerce was not disclosed during a suspension appeal where the individual was granted extra allowances. Finally, I am concerned about behind-the-scenes work. Per Board Bylaw 2D10, members may only speak on behalf of the board on topics approved in an open meeting. Yet both the chair and vice chair attended HR meetings regarding this hiring process, meetings that were never discussed or authorized by the full board in public. Furthermore, Bylaw 4E requires all business correspondence to happen via Washoe County email. However, correspondence regarding these hiring meetings took place on a member's private business email. For the public to trust this new director, they must first trust the process. I urge you to adhere strictly to your own bylaws and remain fully transparent moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Isla Arbitam?
Ilya Arbotman for the record.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Kate said, but I'm also here to echo what Naseem said. I would love to welcome the candidates to Washoe County. I think we're all ready to turn the page in what has been difficult for the whole community, not just for the board and not just for the people in this room. I think the library staff, and this includes, from personal conversations I've had, everyone is nervous, but everyone is really ready for a new director. Any public process like this will have flaws, and I think it's important to address those moving forward, not pretend that there weren't any flaws. However, I think it's also really important for the library to get a new director. So despite that, I think we do have 4 great candidates. Personally, I don't think it's really my place to endorse any of them individually. I think any of them would be amazing. They all have a lot of library experience. And I really hope that after today, we can kind of start anew between the board and whoever the new director is going to be. And I'm also here kind of both on behalf of Freedom to Read Nevada, also just as a library advocate and community member, saying that whoever the new director is, we would love to, the community would love to establish a relationship with them right off the bat, to sort of front load a smooth working relationship between anybody that is interested in helping our libraries thrive. I was deeply involved in the WC1 campaign, and I think there's probably room to fundraise for the library moving forward, maybe even at the state level. And I know there's a lot of hunger in the community to keep that going. I don't think we need to be satisfied with the current level of funding. So whoever the new director is, I want to let them know that we're ready to work with them, just like we worked with the last director to make that happen. And I hope you guys make the right choice today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see no further signatures who have signed in for the first round of public comment. Seeing none, I will proceed to item number 3, which is board comment. This is a non-action item limited to announcements, strategic plan activity, updates, or issues proposed for future agendas and/or workshops. Do my colleagues have any comments to make?
Chair, for the record, Trustee Jacks. I just want to welcome everybody here today. Thank you all for being here. The community showing up to participate in this board action is really great to see. I know we're working around employee and staff to make this happen. So while Washoe County staff and everybody else does work Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5, making this happen is not for lack of transparency, but just for logistical reasons. So that's why we're here today. And I want to thank my board members for all of their work to make this happen. And I think we will talk a lot more about moving forward this motion before us for the hiring. But I just want to say that I have been advocating in the community for our library system. I was in the lobby earlier, and you'll see I have signs and balloons. And I go around town and I ask people if they use the libraries and what's the best thing they like about the libraries. And the homeschools, are they using the libraries? And I think moving forward, getting people into the libraries to use them for books and checking out books is a real nice way to use this beautiful public space that we all enjoy and love. So I just wanted to thank everyone for being here, and I appreciate it. To my board members, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Jacks. Any other comments from the board at this time? Hearing none?
Trustee Moser?
Yes.
I just wanted to thank everyone for your public comment today, all the staff that are here, the previous board and director. Thank you for showing up and voicing from your experience, as well as the public. I've really appreciated growing with everyone over the last 3.5 years, and I really do value hearing everyone's opinions and perspectives. We all lead and follow at different times and spaces, and so, soon I'll eventually be off of this board and someone else will lead, and I'll be back where you are all at. So I really am grateful for your opinions and perspectives and for growing with us as a board. Thank you for coming today.
I will add to that, we are excited to have you all here, members of the public, certainly members of the library team, and we're excited to have a selection of candidates that the search firm has presented to us. We are with you in seeing their resumes for the first time, and I can assure you that under no circumstances was there a lack of transparency. As I indicated, I read the resumes along with all of you. Seeing no other comments, Trustee Ruff?
Trustee Ruff, for the record, I just wanted to say it took a lot of work by county employees through HR and through the chair and vice chair of this board to make this happen today, and also the work of the candidates who, I want to thank all of them, the pool that put considerable effort into sending their applications to the search firm, and to all those who interviewed them, selected them, gave us the short list. That took a lot. And even getting here today took a lot. And I know everyone is waiting, the librarians who are amazing and fabulous and have stepped up and into additional roles to keep our community safe and happy and engaged in our public libraries. Thank you to them. And I know this is a great opportunity for us to select someone who will continue to move us forward. So thank you all.
Thank you, trustees. Any other comments? Hearing none, we will move to item number 4, approval of the meeting minutes from January 21st, 2026. I count on my colleagues to review these minutes and see if there are any indications of corrections or revisions that are needed. I would like to point to one, and that is a comment on page 3 of the minutes where a member of the public mentioned an article that stated Debbie Steers as acting director and questioned the transparency of that decision. I want to mention that there was no promotion of Debbie Steers to acting director. Dave Solero, assistant county manager, clarified that Debbie Steer was not actually appointed acting director, but had been given out-of-class pay to take on the daily duties left by the vacancy. Other than that, are there any comments on the minutes from January 21st? Hearing none, I would like a motion to approve the minutes of the January 21st meeting. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, Trustee Ruff, for the record, I move that we approve of the January board minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Vice Chair Moser, second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone not in favor, say nay. Hearing none, approval of the minutes has occurred. We will move on to item number 5, which is acknowledging a $110,000 donation from Friends of Washoe County Library. I really appreciate this. We can't say enough about this kind of big-heartedness and commitment to our libraries. Would you like to speak? Please state your name for the record.
Thank you. Jamie Hemingway. I am the Public Information and Development Officer for Washoe County Library System. And I am here today to help recognize the wonderful donation that the Friends of Washoe County Library nonprofit has made for us this year. Just a little bit of background. The Friends of Washoe County Library was established in 1980 and is a Nevada nonprofit 501c3 organization supporting Washoe County Library System. Through their projects, they strive to give children an educational head start, encourage literacy, and foster lifelong learning and recreation for adults. In the first quarter of fiscal year 2025-2026, the Friends of Washoe County Library nonprofit donated $110,000 to Washoe County Library System. And these are funds that come from their fundraising book sales that they have throughout the year. So throughout each year, they take in donated books, they sell those for very, very reasonable prices. And at the end of the year, they make a generous donation like this to our library system. And percentages of the donation go toward everything from technology, supporting materials purchases. They help me with marketing, also library training of staff. And then they also very generously support payment of some of the folks we have coming and do programs for us, like music and arts programs. And they also help us purchase all those summer reading book prizes. So we are incredibly grateful to them. And I'd love to take a photo with any friends that might be here today with the giant check if possible.
Are there friends of the library who'd like to step forward to have their photo taken?
After that, either before or after, we do need to do the acknowledgement. So I think that's something you might have to formally acknowledge, but the acknowledgement language is there in the subject line.
It is. It's a big, beautiful check. It's a big picture.
May I ask for the board to formally acknowledge this incredible donation from our hardworking friends? I know I shop the book sales and they are incredible. An array of CDs and DVDs and books from every possible category. So we couldn't be happier to have this kind of opportunity to accept this check. May I get a motion to acknowledge acceptance of this donation from the Friends of the Library?
Madam Chair, Trustee Ruff, for the record, I just want to say it is a lot of work before we get to the acknowledgement because there is the collection, there's the cleaning, there's the sorting, and the placement on the shelves, and then there is the staffing for multiple days, multiple, hourly schedules of, covering their shop as people line up to come in. It is amazing. It's such hard work, and it's so worth the community support for this. And you get books, like Jamie said, for great prices. So I encourage everyone to go. And I move that we acknowledge the $110,000 check by the Friends of the Washoe County Library.
Do I have a second?
Trustee Rodriguez, for the record, second.
Thank you. Possible for a vote, I'll say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hearing no nays, we graciously and gratefully accept this check for $110,000 from the Friends of the Library.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. All right, we will move on to item number 6, discussion and possible action to consider the following top candidates: Lisa McClure, Caprice Robertson, Jessica Styons, and Tammy Westergaard for the vacant Washoe County Library Director position pursuant to NRS 379.0251B, including interviewing the top candidates, selection of the library director, and possible direction to staff regarding the negotiation of an employment contract. Would you please introduce yourselves?
For the record, Julie Paholke, Washoe County Human Resources. For the record, Pam Derby, Manager of the Executive Recruitment Function at CPS HR Consulting. Before we start talking about the process that led us here, I wanted to talk about the logistics for today, if that's okay.
Please.
You all have a packet in front of you that has a copy of the candidate material they submitted. And you all have in that packet the interview questions for each of you to ask? Okay, great. The candidates have 45 minutes to answer the questions. The first 5 minutes will be them giving you an overview of themselves and their background, and the clock will be on for 5 minutes, so they'll see that, and then they'll roll into the interview questions. We give the candidates the interview questions 15 minutes ahead of time, which is our practice, so they will have had some time to review them. We will have a lunch break, and I will let you determine when that is based on the schedule this morning. Lunch is scheduled to be delivered at noon, so I'll let you determine just when to call for the lunch. Okay. When the interview process has been completed, we will give you each a ballot and you can vote on your top candidate at that point. Okay. Any questions on anything?
Julie, I do have just a comment to make. Would you clarify for the public that this is the first time we as trustees are seeing the questions that we are going to pose to the candidates?
This is the first time you've seen the questions.
Right, thank you.
Vice Chair Moser, I just wanted to mention, we got an email that one of the candidates had dropped. Am I correct? Okay,
Yes.
so there are only 3 candidates today that will be interviewed.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So I'd like to talk about the process we went through and how we got here today. When there is a department head vacancy that reports to a board, Human Resources works with the chair and the vice chair of that board, and we outsource the recruitment, which is why CPS is here to talk about that today. When we talked last August about the process, the first thing that we did was submit requests for proposals from executive recruitment agencies. Once we received those, we did review those and identified those to interview. And the chair and the vice chair were involved with HR in the interviews of those agencies. And CPS was chosen to conduct that recruitment. Human Resources then put the contract together, so that took a little bit of time to go through that process. And then we turned it over to CPS. And just to confirm, the role of CPS was to conduct the recruitment for the library director, identify the top candidates, and move them forward in the process to the interview process today. Are there any questions on that? So, and I also wanted to state that CPS provided the interview questions as well to us. So Human Resources was not involved in that. All right, well, I will turn it over to Pam Derby.
Thank you, Julie.
Good morning. Thank you so much. When CPS received this recruitment, we also identified a subject matter expert who has worked with us previously, Melinda Cervantes, who is a retired library director, both from California counties and Arizona counties. And she worked very closely on this recruitment, spoke with each of you regarding what you were looking for in a candidate, from which we identified an ideal candidate profile, put together marketing materials, which included a very attractive recruitment brochure that was distributed around the country. We did very extensive outreach, personal outreach. We know from our analytics that 65 to 70% of candidates do apply through that outreach. However, we also run a very aggressive advertising campaign, which included ALA, the Nevada Library Association, California Library Association, the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutes, and the Library Journal. We received 29 resumes. Of those 29, Ms. Cervantes reviewed all of the resumes and chose 12 of those to do very comprehensive screening interviews with. After those screening interviews, she spoke with HR, and it was decided that there were 6 of those candidates to move forward as a group 1 and to be interviewed today. During the time from when we invited candidates and today, we have had 3 of those candidates withdraw. One of them just recently, 2 withdrew very early in the process, and 1 just withdrew in the last couple of days. And that's how we got to the 3 candidates that you are seeing today. Any questions? I know that was a quick summation.
I have a question. Are you at all concerned that we are somewhat limited in our selection number?
I think you still have very qualified candidates. I think that the 6 that we were presenting to you are all very qualified. I think that you're going to need to look at those candidates today and make that decision. But we still feel that the 6 candidates were all qualified to do this job. They could all do this job from our assessment of them. So while it's concerning when candidates withdraw, it is a practice that we're seeing recently in the last year or so. That oftentimes, for whatever, we do every type of position, and we see candidates withdraw for, many different reasons.
Trustee Rodriguez for the record. Just because I know it came up with some of the public comments, and it is actually a question that I have. How thoroughly were the references for all the candidates followed up on?
We have not checked references at this point. We have done media searches to find any media. References will be conducted once you choose a candidate.
So
I'm sorry.
go ahead, please.
Also, because it is a question that has come up, and I'd like to make sure that we're being transparent, regarding going from the 29 resumes down to the 12 that were interviewed and the 6 that were moved forward. How involved were the chair and vice chair in that process, or were they at all?
They were not involved in that process.
So they didn't see the resumes before today from the other candidates. They didn't offer any suggestions for questions other than the ones that they asked of all of the trustees.
I'm sorry, Julie.
They saw the candidate information on Wednesday when this became public. And there was an email that was sent out to the Board of Trustees asking if there were any questions that they would like to give us to send to CPS. And, that offer was out there.
Okay, and then the question about the public was interested in possibly being able to interact with these candidates, having something where the public could be involved. At one point, we were told that the idea of a meet and greet came up, but that the chair and vice chair were not wanting to do that. That decision, why wasn't it made public? Because maybe the public did have something input that they wanted.
Typically at the department head level, we haven't had meet and greets. We did do that for the county manager recruitment, but typically for the department heads, we haven't done that.
Okay, but one of our one of our previous library board meetings, it was said that that question came up, and that because of that conversation that was had with our chair and vice chair, it was decided to not do it.
It was decided not to do that.
Okay, I'm just wanting to get the transparency out there. Okay, thank you.
Trustee Rodriguez, you seem to have an issue with the transparency. We followed the protocols. We followed the protocols given to us by the Human Resources Department of Washoe County.
Don't have an issue with transparency per se. It was just questions that have come up from the public that just wanted clarification on that. Because going back to what was said by another earlier member of the public is, per our bylaws, the chair and the vice chair or any trustee cannot really speak on behalf or give input on behalf of the entire board, which kind of appears to be what happened here.
I would ask Julie, you to address that relative to the process HR of Washoe County uses.
So with regard back to identifying the vendor, we worked together to interview the executive search firms and we identified CPS. With regard to the meet and greet, it did come up in a conversation and we had said, typically at this level at a department head, we do not do that. That's not been a standard practice for us.
I do have a question. This is the first time I'm hearing references have not been checked prior to us interviewing the 3, I thought it was 4, but is now 3 candidates. Why would we be interviewing people who do not have, you have not yet delineated their references or confirmed their resumes as presented. That's just not something I'm accustomed to. Maybe it's standard practice with Washoe County Human Resources, but it seems to me that we'd be spending a lot of time speaking with people prior to checking what they've stated to us as their background without the opportunity for you to have checked their references.
It depends on the recruitment. Oftentimes we do the references before we get to this final stage. However, you had 6 candidates to begin with. Most candidates are very wary of having their references checked when there's so many people still in the pool. We do very thorough reference checks. It has not been the practice of Washoe County HR to do references until a candidate is chosen. And so we followed HR protocol. But any candidate that you choose, we will do it. Any offer of employment is made conditionally based on successful reference checks and a successful background check, and those will be completed.
Marie Rodriguez, for the record. Let's say we choose a candidate today and we make them a conditional offer. References are checked, and based on those checks onto the references, we decide that that is not the best candidate. What would be the follow-up process in choosing a director from that point? What would be the next step then?
That would be an additional meeting with the Board of Trustees to discuss what further steps would look like.
Any comments from my fellow trustees?
Yes, sorry. I do know that a couple of candidates we are looking at are not local. Would these people be required to travel back and redo interviews with us? I mean, at this point, we only have 3, and there's only 1 that's local. So, if we have to schedule another meeting, would that entail re-interviewing?
Again, that decision would be up to the board in discussions with CPS and HR.
Public discussions, I assume?
Yes, during a public meeting.
Good. So, Julie, not to belabor the point, but this is the first time I'm hearing that the practice is not to check references for final candidates being presented to the board and the public. Is that correct?
When we recruit, it's generally the thing that we'll do after the top candidate is selected. When we go through our general recruitment processes at the county, as Pam indicated, in this case, there were a large number, and sometimes when references are done, sometimes candidates back out. So our normal practice when we do recruitments, our recruitment process would be for the departments to identify their top candidate or candidates and do backgrounds and references at that time.
Vice Chair Moser, so I'm just trying to think for an explanation for this, and what I can fathom is that because reference checks are done while they're still employed, and maybe it's because they don't want their employer to know. Okay, so then this is what was done with the county manager as well?
That's my recollection, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Please, Trustee Jacks.
Brief question, Trustee Jacks, for the record. So, excuse me, Julie, you mentioned the email about the questions being asked that you sent. So yeah, so just to clarify real quick, February 4th, we got that email that we were going to have this meeting on March 6th of this week. Okay. That's where here at the end, it says, if you have any specific interview questions, please send those to us within a couple weeks. We'll forward them to CPS, but it may not or may be included in the final interview questions, right?
Yes.
That was just a brief email. We got it like 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. Then the meeting got moved to here and today with some dropouts. Understandably, these are the questions from HR, just so the public knows, right? We got these for each candidate and we're going to ask our set of questions. But in my mind, I mean, I worked tirelessly since Wednesday when these were released, hours and days on end. My parents are probably sick of my kids because they've been watching them, so doubt it. But you know what I'm saying? The amount of time invested to ask the questions or prepare questions that I thought we would get to ask, just went out the window, right? With the pre-asked questions that we have here. So, and then with that in mind, I'll take direction from the chair moving forward, just that, I'm not seeing kind of, as one of the previous library directors stated, looking to chart a new course here with this process. So I think the board has taken on a leadership role in conjunction with HR that has given us just an unvetted opportunity to see all the candidates. We can't ask our questions. And again, I'm not saying this to you two wonderful ladies here before us today. Honestly, it's just not you. I'm just talking to the overall process and to my board, just saying to them that the extensive amount of work that we had to do to prepare for this just doesn't seem like it's fair, not only to the public for the process, but we did get an email regarding this process following our last meeting, which was back in January for this board, that we were advised that in fact, the whole process was taken out of to clarify some of the comments, taken out of the chair and the vice chair hands and completely resolved with your departments. Again, not you personally, again. So when people say, oh, the chair and the vice chair, as mentioned by some other trustees in January, in fact, had no input. Once this process started. So I just wanted to get some of that information on the record. And I do have a list of my own questions. I'm happy to go past noon and lunch, but I would like to talk to my fellow board members here now and say, I just think we need a bigger pool and we need a better process. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure you want to go with that.
Trustee Jacks, were there questions that you submitted that you don't see here?
No. I did get the email and I just wanted to clarify that the board had gotten email saying, hey, if you have specific questions, you can send them by this date, but then that meeting was moved. But again, it's very clear. They may or may not be included in the final interview questions. So it just seems like the one thing we have here is to hire a new library director. As one of the previous directors mentioned, this is a rare opportunity. They come 10, 12 years into, a board's tenure and many aren't here that long, unfortunately. So that's where I stand on that. I did not submit, but I did bring to this meeting extensive questions specifically for each candidate. And sorry, last question, Madam Chair, while I have a microphone. Are the candidates in this room now? You
No.
guys would know. Okay.
No.
But they're here in the back.
They're in human resources right now, and they're not listening.
Sequester.
Yes.
Okay,
They're
all right, just checking it, see him in here. So then I'll move forward on. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair Silver, I do have a question, Julie, and I don't mean to belabor this. So the search firm reduced the pool to 12. How were the 12 reduced to 6 that's now 3?
So Melinda did those extensive, comprehensive interviews, and she grouped the candidates in a group 1 and a group 2. And then in a discussion with HR, it was decided on the final 6 candidates.
I do have some concerns about that. I'm just taking a minute to think, because it was just this morning we were told, or last night or yesterday, or Friday, that someone had dropped out. I only looked at my text last night that someone had dropped out. And Julie, you indicated that reference checks cause people to drop out, but I assume these candidates went public prior to this time by submitting their resume, you knowing who was looking for an alternative opportunity if they were currently employed. So you're suggesting that the reference check process would have compelled these 3 individuals to have dropped out?
Not necessarily, that they could have dropped out for other reasons. I don't think any of them were specific. Yeah. We heard from CPS that they had dropped out. And the most recent one was she dropped out after Wednesday because her name initially was on the list of candidates.
Comments from my fellow
Chair Silver,
Trustees.
Trustee Ruff, for the record. I feel a little bit blindsided by this. I don't understand not checking the references before presenting the candidates to the board. Other than I get that if you are currently employed, you'd have to have that conversation with your employer. But if you really are looking to move, then you have that conversation, I would think. So that concerns me. The other thing I will say is, I tried to get, even looking at the questions earlier, and was told I would see them today. And having interviewed just with the school district for a couple of positions, not me personally, but on the committee, I knew that you had a standard list and that you could only answer those or ask those questions on that list. So the 7 questions we have are the same 7 for all 3 candidates. So I understand that. It's just really frustrating not to be able to ask any follow-up questions.
I would ask you to ask follow-up questions, meaning if a candidate provides a response that you're not satisfied with, or you think that you might need a little bit more information, please ask a follow-up question. It's not an additional question, but you can ask a follow-up question to any of the candidates on any of their responses, if you feel like you didn't get enough information from them.
Trustee Jacks, did you have a comment? Sure.
I have a follow-up on that. So we are limited to those follow-up questions. Who, if we are making a mistake in the way we're asking it, who says to me, Trustee Ruff, you can't ask that?
As long as you stick to the questions the way they're written, and if you ask a follow-up question to a candidate to say, perhaps, can you provide a little more information on that, or what steps did you take to make that decision? As long as it's follow-up for that specific question, you should be fine.
Okay.
If you have any questions about, oh, can I ask this? I think your legal counsel and I would be happy to respond.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to just go back to the interview questions. Those did come from CPS. That was one of the things that we had asked them to do initially, conduct the recruitment, bring the top group of candidates to us, and please put together the interview questions.
Trustee Jacks.
For CPS, question, we spoke with the lady, what was her name? From your department, she's not here.
Linda Cervantes.
Linda. So that's who we spoke to. We all got the phone call. I think it was back in December. Did you guys speak to anybody else? Could you let the board know? Did you speak with all the staff managers, librarians? Who else besides the board? Did you guys get info? Librarians?
We were
staff?
directed to just speak with the board, although I do know that Melinda has worked with members of the staff to do some discussions.
I believe she did talk to each of the library managers as well.
Okay, so the recruiting firm did speak with each of the library branch managers on, hey, who would you like your boss to be? Hey, what would you like? Right? Kind of questions, what they wanted in the next library director, right? I think that's unusual. Just for the record, to speak to somebody outside the board that at first it was no, but then we talked to each library staff manager, who are in the union, who are not on the board as far as interview questions and things like that. So kind of a little unusual there in my opinion. And that was my follow-up question just on who else they had interviewed. So Madam Chair, I would turn it over to you and Vice Chair. I appreciate all your hard work on this. I think the board does have a consensus that we might be wasting time of the 3 candidates that are here today. And I think we're all a little disappointed in the process. No matter where we stand, I think there should be a more neutral pool available for us, maybe to see those top 29 and go from there.
Vice
That's all.
Chair Moser?
Chair.
Thank you. I just want to say I understand everyone's concerns, but I do want to reiterate my faith in Julie and the company that we did hire and the interviews that we did do for that hiring process for the company to vet. And especially Melinda, her experience in talking to her and all the library managers. And I think I would like to at least hear what these candidates bring today. They did travel here to keep an open mind. The public have said they all see, good candidates that are available, and previous library director and board members do also agree. So I just encourage the board to keep an open mind. Let's give them a chance to speak, and then I trust the process that's already been vetted by the county as well.
Chair,
Rodriguez. Oh,
please,
sorry.
Trustee Rodriguez.
Given that our pool has gone from 6 to 3, out of the original 12, were any of those candidates competitive enough that we could consider increasing our pool back up to 6? Or were they just not competitive enough?
It was determined that the 6 that you were going to see were the most competitive. Certainly we could do that. I agree with Vice Chair Mosier that you have 3 candidates here today that I would be hopeful that you would speak with and give them that opportunity. Some of them have traveled here to do this. I think they're all highly qualified for this position. I will also say that we have done library director recruitments all over the country, and oftentimes the board only does ask to see the last 2 or 3 final candidates. So that is not unusual, actually, for you to only be interviewing 3 candidates at this point.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Trustee Ruff, for the record, I do agree. I mean, I feel like the things I've said support the idea of talking to the 3 candidates, and I do want to hear what they have to say. And then we can move forward after we've interviewed. It felt a little bit like the community, I think, being in the dark regarding the questions and not seeing the questions and, asking the follow-up questions. I am prepared to interview the candidates that we have, because it is, as I've mentioned previously, it takes time to put your interview packet together, and then to have gone through the screening process through Melinda to get to this point. And you're right, Pam, the travel as well. So that's where I am on this, is that I do want to interview the candidates that we have here today.
And I would like to clarify for the record, when CPS did meet with us and they had broken the candidates into the 3 groups, top and then medium and below medium, and they went over the top 6 candidates, I said, is there any other candidate that should be in this top group? And they said, no, that's why these candidates are in the top group. They are the top. They are the top candidates. And I had said, can you rank them, 1 through 6? And they said, every candidate is a number 1. They all bring something different. They all have, different ideas and philosophies, but they said any one of the 6 could step into the job. And that's why we stayed at the 6.
Marie Rodriguez, for the record, and just for clarification, that's why I asked that question. If these were definitely the stronger candidates, then I do have a concern with the people that did have to travel in. So I just want to make sure that we did get the best candidates possible.
Chair Silver, for the record, I commend you for all the hard work you've done. I'm still hung up on interviewing people whose references have not been checked. Having been in HR for many years, I did not spend time interviewing people who were either reluctant to have their references checked, knowing they would be before a public body and on camera and in full public view, to find out that we are going to take the time to interview these 3. They deserve that. But I'm discouraged that we went from 12 to 6 to 3. And although all 6 may have been qualified, 3 dropped out, and I don't think we were advised of that. I'm not going to say improperly, just at the last moment. And I am very concerned because I've never interviewed anyone without having checked references. Otherwise, I could find myself spending a lot of time, to Trustee Rodriguez's point and others, that we'd be interviewing someone whose references were not sufficient for us to make a full and qualified decision. I don't know if that's standard practice by your firm or by the county, but this is the first time I'm hearing that references have not been checked for these three individuals. Would have been four, but three.
As Julie mentioned, that is standard practice for department heads. Now, most department heads do not report to a board, so that makes this a little different situation. But for HR, it is important for them to keep the process for all department heads that they do in their internal recruitments. They don't do reference checks until they get to a final candidate. We do oftentimes do references on the finalists. That is a step in the process. However, the county has a process that does not include that. This is another department head. They should be vetted the same as other department heads are who hold that position. It would be a different process for this person should we have done those reference checks. And I completely understand your concern, but that is a process that should apply to everyone that's a department head.
Chair Silver, but I understand that there is a differentiation in that this position reports to a board. Am I correct with that differentiation?
Yes. With regard to backgrounds and reference checks, previously, if there is a top candidate to be identified, if they were made an offer, it would say pending successful completion of a background and reference checks.
Vice Chair Moser, for the record, I can also only imagine that if we published a candidate's name as the chosen director and they failed a reference check, it would be tremendously embarrassing and career ruining for them. And so I would hope that would prevent any false, reference in terms of their application.
I would also add that the library world, even though it's national, international, actually, in many ways, Ms. Cervantes and a couple of our other subject matter experts, one who was an Obama appointee, actually, know people across the country. They have been on the ALA. And so they hear, there's oftentimes things that Melinda knows about people already. And so while we aren't sharing that information necessarily, I can assure you that if we knew that there was something glaring out there, and we have done media checks, and frankly, library directors cannot stay, below the radar anymore. If there is anything that is controversial, et cetera, it hits the media. And we've done extensive media checks, social media checks. And so, anything negative has been reported, in that instance, has been reported to HR. And so I feel confident that we're not going to find something glaring in any of these three candidates.
Other comments from my colleagues?
Trustee Ruff, for the record, thank you for sharing that, because I think that does give us a little bit more confidence in moving forward. And I'm just going to reiterate for the other board members, I'm ready to move forward with the interview questions, the first candidate.
Chair Silver, I would just like to say again, this is the first time we've heard you've not checked references and the first time we've seen the questions. And I'm not sure that they're entirely the reflective of public input or our input, but I am prepared, out of respect for these candidates to whom you've indicated have traveled some distance, to proceed with 3 interviews, noting that I'm most discouraged by the fact we ended up with only 3 candidates. Do want to thank you for your time and hard work behind the scenes. In light of much public comment about transparency, I think you've outlined the HR process, and you've certainly convinced me that the vice chair and I were not out of line in selecting the search firm, but we have not selected the candidates in any way. And that makes me all the more concerned that I'm interviewing people whose references you cannot stand by. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and ask if any of my colleagues object to proceeding with the interviews, understanding that we may not come to a selection today. Hearing no objection, let's begin the process.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Herb Kaplan for the record. I just want to clarify something that has been stated a couple of times here. At the July 30th meeting of the Library Board of Trustees, the process was discussed, and the fact that the chair and vice chair would be involved in those preliminary parts of this search, including the determination of hiring a firm and the timeline of the process, were clearly discussed in a public meeting, and the board did approve that. So it sounds like what has transpired is consistent with what the board approved at the July 30th meeting.
Deputy DA Kaplan, I'm in no way questioning the process. I'm looking at today's outcome of only 3 candidates and no reference checks. I'm not in any way questioning.
I understand that. I was just clarifying because there were comments that this wasn't authorized in terms of the chair and vice chair participating in that initial stage of the process. I was just clarifying for that purpose. And the chair is correct in that we have 3 candidates here, and the board has 2 options. Either we don't hire someone today, or we do hire someone today if one of those candidates stands out. If the board chooses not to hire today, I do think that we need to start the process over to some extent, meaning that interviews would have to be redone. If any of the 3 candidates who are here today are chosen to be a part of a bigger group, I think we would have 1 day of interviewing whatever number of candidates we had at that point.
Just for clarification, though, from what I understand from Human Resources, at no point in time would we be involved in the determination as to the finalists. This board has not had any participation in selecting the 6, now 3.
That's my understanding, yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Trustee Ruff, for the record. As DA Kaplan mentioned, we did give that over to the firm. As the board, we did decide that the firm was going to make those selections for us. And I think that even though I have some experience as a librarian, I have public school library experience, not public librarian experience. So I do feel like CPS has gone through and they know, where they ask for, candidates, they've done their recruitment. And while it's disappointing to not have at least 6, there are all kinds of extenuating circumstances that a person could decide to pull their application. Someone in their family is sick. Perhaps they looked at how expensive housing is here. There are all kinds of things. Maybe they are a candidate in another job search. And so the job was offered to them before we were able to meet today. I still feel like these 3 people are worthy of our time because they've expressed that whether they live here or not, would like to move here and be part of our community. And there's no guarantee, if we were to start this all over again, that the candidates that we have here would stay in the pool. And maybe the people that we would have are some of the other 12 that weren't seen by the firm as appropriate for our location, or more people wouldn't apply. I think it's very hard to ever know who is out there and who's looking to move, because it's, housing is expensive. So moving a family or, moving even as an individual to a new location isn't always an option. So I'm just putting that out there because I don't know if it's really going to serve us to, and I don't know, we haven't interviewed the candidates, but the what ifs are really impossible to know. So again, I'd like to just interview the candidates and then see where we are from there.
I think out of respect for these candidates, we'll proceed with interviews, but I need to, for the record, correct that the top candidates do not include one of them now. And I believe from the email, that is Jessica Styons. Is that correct? Is there someone to ask that question to? Jessica Styons was determined to take herself out of the consideration pool. All right, then I believe we all agree that out of respect for these candidates, while disappointed that we are at only 3 after this long period, and they are without reference checks, which I think should have been done in regards to this particular process relative to the board being the interviewer. Let's proceed in whatever order HR has determined is most appropriate. I believe that would call for Lisa McClure.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I believe we'll begin with your introduction.
Okay. First, I want to say it's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm very honored to be considered for this position, and I'm very excited about it. In my career, I've always chosen positions that have given me a challenge and allow me to do the things that I enjoy most, serving my community and improving lifelong learning. I'm a transformationist, and in my job as a transformationist in public librarianship, I set a goal. That goal is to engage and serve my community, to empower my staff to increase community outcomes, to act with honesty and integrity, and to create a library that is relevant and essential to serve the public good. I'm kind of a Pollyanna about libraries. I'm very passionate about it, and it's my life's work. It's what I love to do. It's not just a job. And I consider myself a library professional and a library leader. I'm dedicated to public libraries and public librarianship in general. I've spoken nationally. I present all the time at conferences. I've written white papers, won tons of grants and awards. My belief is that the public library is the greatest gift in our modern economy. There's nothing like it where in trust, we take from our citizens and we give them a place that they can thrive and learn and grow without expecting a return. And as a library director, it's my pleasure, but also my responsibility to deliver that gift to them and deliver a return on investment. And my return on investment is not quantitative. I don't care how many people come through the door. You could be having a festival outside and you have a lot of people using the bathroom. What I like to look at is community outcomes, not whether I'm building library success, but whether my community succeeds as a result of what we do. And that is that we increase knowledge and skills, but especially that we change attitudes and behaviors about learning and literacy. So people feel that this is an important part of our lives and understand and know, and we market it to them, that we are there to help them be better people and that their money is well invested in us. And like I said, what I look for is outcomes based. The work that I do and the work that we would do together helps people improve academically, professionally, economically, socially, culturally, politically, healthily, environmentally, all a whole bunch of other leads too. And my integrity comes from my commitment to deliver that transformation and to deliver those outcomes, to make us be that relevant and essential service for the public good. And I've chosen jobs that help me succeed in that path. My first management job was Youth and Family Services Director at Hartford Public Library, second poorest city in the United States, a deep dive into vulnerable populations. Our first campaign was that the library was for free. Broward County Library, 1.95 million people, $60 million, 38 branches. And I was community engagement manager, was kind of like chief public services officer. And I was in charge of system-wide quality and branch equity and building teams to deliver that. I worked for Cheltenham Township Library System and Linden Public Library, very outdated libraries, where I had to bring that understanding of outcomes-based service. For places that had no really good budgets, their budgets were in Word, and modernize the library. I'm respected for my innovation, my creativity, my experience, my dedication, and my love for libraries.
Thank you very much. We now have a series of questions, Ms. McClure.
Okay.
And I will start with the first question. The library director reports directly to and is evaluated by the Board of Trustees. How would you build an effective working relationship with a board that is responsible for your performance achievement of stated objectives and approval of the strategic plan?
How I work, I look at your expectations and my expectations for myself. And believe me, I will always be the greatest critic, and my expectation will always be the highest. My goal is to, in building this relationship, is to learn about you, learn about the community, meet with you individually if you have committees, and then look at key partners, leaders in the field, leaders in the community, and my staff. So I can be an advocate from my staff to you, and then I can be an advocate for you to the staff in the community. We work together. We don't battle. My goal is always collegial, transparent, good-humored, and outcome-focused. And I base my work on those. The achievement of stated objectives are those outcomes that I described to you, academic, professional, and so on. Qualitative, not quantitative, and based on how our community is succeeding, those measures. So I will be studying data, municipal reports, meeting with key leaders again, and learning about this wonderful organization and community. I will be having visioning sessions with the board, with the staff in regards to the board, and with community members on what they want from us, what they feel they need from us. And together we will work peacefully and and honestly and transparently together because we should never be opponents in this. I'm not a yes person, and I think that's to your benefit. I will always be working to achieve outcomes together. So we will share our ideas before we have decisions. We will work on our objectives together, and we will keep those objectives flexible and adaptable. And so we have discussions before resolutions. And approvals of decisions, resolutions, the strategic plans, that should not be a big yes or no from you to me by the end. By the time we get to decision making, it should be a natural fulfillment of our path together and of our working together, and a fulfillment of our process. That means that we are partners in this. I will understand your goals and you will understand mine, and hopefully we can listen to each other with that. I know there's been a bit of turmoil in recent history in the library, and I always believe that working together solves things and brings about the best outcome. And like I said, no surprises at the end.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair Mosher, the next question is yours.
Vice Chair Moser for the record. Question 2, given recent personnel changes and budget challenges that have impacted the Washoe County Library System, what specific steps would you take in your first 6 to 12 months to restore confidence among staff, the board, and library users?
Well, I've studied the challenges and issues quite extensively. I've read articles and reports, and it's everybody goes through these things at some time. My first step is what I always do in any organization I join is a 3-month assessment. I speak with you. I speak with the key partners, leaders in the community, the staff, the public. I look at surveys, reports. I review equipment, budgets, mechanicals, everything that I need to know about it. Again, nothing should be a surprise. And to restore confidence, I use a participatory style of management. You know, I want to come here and say I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm bright, I'm energetic, I'm passionate, I'm fun. I've never raised my voice once in my career. And, but I'm also serious about the work. It's what drives me. And I need you to learn that, and I will learn what motivates you. So with the staff, you know, I mentioned my goal is to empower my staff to increase community outcomes. So if I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, I sit in my office, and a lot of times, you know, I'm not out on the floor. I'm not dealing with the public very much. You know, and of course I will be, but not the person at the desk. When I look at a vision, when we create a vision together with you and with the community, I need everyone to embrace, especially staff, embrace and internalize that vision and use it in their daily work. I require that all my staff can articulate what their role is and how it is contributing to success, because I tell them your success is my success, is library success, is community success. You can't break that into parts. And when I look at, so I do my 3-month assessment, that turns into a 1-year working plan that the 3 months is part of. We establish the steps for the final months. And that turns into our next strategic plan, if that fits the timeline. And I make this a very participatory process. I've had phone hours when anyone could call me, office hours where anyone could stop by. A security guard, a clerk, whoever. And I act with humor, honesty, collegiality, support, and transparency. And with library users, I do the same things. I'm open to what they say. I want give and take, and we will work together on that path. So once again, we come to that fulfillment. That's not a big surprise. I'm generally, you know, they always say, what's one word to describe you? And my staff have always said that I'm genuine. I say, I want to hear what you have to say, and I don't listen with a blank face and then walk away and do what I plan to do anyways. I like when, because frankly, I have a lot to learn from you and my staff and the community members. I currently live in North Jersey, but I've done a huge amount of research on Nevada politics and local areas and stuff. So pretty soon I'll know more than a lot of Native people, but their confidence is not so much in their job description, but it's that we're going to advocate for each other and that we together can build success.
Thank you. I'll pass it.
Trustee Jacks, I believe you have question number 3.
Thank you, Lisa. Hi, I'm Trustee Jacks for the record. Nice to meet you. Thanks for being here today. I do have a question here regarding, what should be the top 3 priorities for the organization as we prepare to welcome a new library director. But I did have a brief question for you. Did you personally then speak to the library staff at all? No, the recruiting firm did. I'm sorry. But my question is, were you aware of our current strategic plan process for Washoe County? Did they give you our current timeline as far as the question we asked top 3 priorities? But we do have a crunch for coming up with our county strategic plan and deadlines and things like that for 2026. Were you aware of those? And then what would be the top 3?
I've looked through things, things change when new people come on and stuff like that, but I have looked through them and I'm, prepared to meet whatever deadlines you have.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want to restate your question, Trustee?
Yeah,
Jacks?
just the top 3 priorities for the organization and why.
I think one important thing is because of the turmoil and some fear for the future, we need to look at understanding and embracing our vision. And like I said, having the staff use it in their daily work. You can get caught up in discussing particular books or what one person did when, but we need to figure out what this organization is about. And that we can all articulate it and what the goal of that needs to be. So that of course is the visioning sessions and working together on that. Everything else flows from a place of understanding. And I will be a role model in that process. Not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. The top 3 priorities, the second priority would be discussing our budget needs. And I like to start, a lot of budgets, they say, oh, we need more money, let's increase every line by 5%. But that's not how budgets work. I do strategic budgeting, assessing our priorities through the strategic plan. And less incremental and more strategic looks on what we want to accomplish and what we see as our future. Because if we just go with a vision for the next few years instead of 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you know, what staff we're going to need to hire, what new branches we're going to build, and discuss how our budget will be flexible to meet those needs. A lot of times in a situation such as this, when you know you've got your flat budget and we're still working on what the future budget will be, and you know you're currently at like 17, 18 million. But so the temptation is just to fix areas of the budget instead of starting afresh based on strategic priorities. So it should be a reorganization of ideas of what that budget is for and how it should proceed. The third priority, I would say, is team building. I've worked a lot with branch buddies, project improvement teams, which is peer education, creating brainstorming sessions, and bringing people together. So understanding our vision and embracing it, and making it be a joint vision, discussing our budget needs and how our current needs impact the future and what our plans are and how do we grow from that and what the budget really needs to be. And then team building. And a lot of times when people go through conflict, they become very siloed, departments or even individuals, and they're not working together. And you can't do a strategic goal that way. So I've worked a lot on team building, a very participatory management style. And it might be looking at, do we need to bring different people together? At Broward County Library, I was in charge of all public-facing departments. I brought together youth, adult literacy, community services, which was DEI, special events, outreach, marketing, facilities improvement, and a bunch of things, and I created a new team. I always remember that first meeting, and I brought up summer learning, and half the rest of the people said, well, you know, adult marketing, do we have to be for this? Can we go? And I'm like, yes, because you're all affected. Everyone understands summer learning. So I could bring specific budget items to you or where I think you've made errors in collection development or successes in particular storytelling programs in your early, you know, great early learning resources. But that's less important on building a path to the future because things have been in turmoil. So we need to say, this is the point today where we start building success.
Just since this is my one question, Lisa, I just had a follow-up. You did mention it a couple times earlier as well, but you speak of turmoil in some of the research you did and then some of the discussions here. What do you mean in regards to that? Are you just talking nationally or locally? And you just mentioned it a couple times, so I did already have that as a question. So are you finding the turmoil within the library systems or just in general?
I mean, I think there's a disconnect. You know, to be honest here, there's been a disconnect between board and staff and with your previous director and then the assistant director leaving in less than optimal circumstances. The important thing is saying we're building a future for the library. How do we do that? And, you know, I deal a lot with building quality, branch equity, and positive relationships. And that, I think, more than do we get rid of this author, do we, Saturday or Sunday hours and stuff like that. Though, of course, we'll be doing studies on optimal hours and things like that. Those are the part of implementation. When we're looking at organizational priorities, we're looking at a viable and sustainable organization. So we're looking at financial realities. We're looking at ways people discuss things and solve problems. Because when I look at some of the specific examples of what happened at meetings and stuff, I've watched a couple of your meetings, and without that trust and the idea of a sustainable future, not we're going to get by for the next year or going to get by for the next 2 years. We want people to feel part of that process and know that when it comes to decision making, we can trust each other.
Madam Chair, just briefly, Herb Kaplan for the record. Going forward, I'd ask the trustees who are reading the questions to read the question verbatim, just to ensure consistency and that each of the applicants is actually being asked the exact same question.
Thank you. The next question, number 4, Trustee Rodriguez.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Describe how you approach conflict with subordinates, board members, and members of the public. Please provide an example that demonstrates your ability to navigate sensitive or high-profile situations while maintaining professionalism and trust.
Conflict comes from not understanding each other. So that keeps along with that same framework that I was talking about. Building transparency and building those teams is important, but navigating situations is about doing the work, showing that you're committed to that work. My most important thing with navigating situations and conflict is creating clear expectations. For a lot of people, have you ever had an evaluation or seen an evaluation where somebody comes in and the supervisor says, and I've been really upset, you waste construction paper, you waste this and everything, and I'm gonna have to cut your budget if you continue the waste. And the person's like, this is the first time I'm hearing this. But what about also what I do with a wider view? Is that working? But no, it's you waste construction paper and you were late 6 times in the first trimester of your pregnancy. And even though pregnancy is important, you have to be on time. Those things often interfere with trust. So I believe in performance-based review. So we set strategic goals for each other and for our direct reports. And they are goals that will make the community succeed. And it's really interesting when you sit down with someone and you're not talking about their last project for that thing or why they're fighting about they need a new laminator or something like that. And yet you say, what do you bring to this organization? What would you like to bring to this organization? And they sit back and like, wow, I've never really thought of that. And that should be the big question. Why is your role here important? How could you make it more important? So we look at these performance-based, outcomes-based goals, and we plot a plan for what that person can do through the year. And then in general, over the next 5 years, look at, long-term career and succession planning. And we assess the things they might need to change about their performance, about their learning. Do they need professional development or education or training? And it's amazing how often people are not asked what is their importance to the organization and what they'd really like to do. Now, my boss told me she got a whole thing about construction paper use at one of her annual reviews. Nothing about how we had built a relationship with the community. So it's about discussing the outcomes that you want to achieve. And then quarterly, you keep in touch with those things. You recommend that maybe, like the youth services librarian said, I don't know some of the things I should be doing. And I said, well, I'll call a couple of youth services directors and you guys can get together and have a meeting about what they're doing and what you might share. And they're like, I never thought of that, about how I could, get my ideas better together. And so we're looking at the outcomes. When I was hired at Broward, it was a new position, the community engagement manager. That was like the chief public services officer. It was like third in charge. And they wanted me to build system-wide quality and branch equity. So there were two things that were needed. There was unequal value and training in staff in the branches. One branch might have, the youth librarian might have been an adult librarian for their whole career and they were told to switch. And then the adult librarian is, fresh from graduation. And then you go to another library and they have 2 seasoned professionals that present at conference. That's not going to get you the same things. Their budgets are different. One has a friends organization, one doesn't. So we look at branch system-wide quality and branch equity. So I created a new service model based on building that quality and branch equity. And that's when I introduced those things, the peer improvement teams that we called pit crews. We had all kind of like racing-based prizes and awards and stuff. And we ended up, there was 636 FTEs and over 900 staff at Broward. And we ended up moving 90 librarians. But because we talked to them and understood what their goals were, a lot of them wanted to go to a different branch anyways because it'd be closer to their home. So we solved it without a lot of negativity. But I did the pit crews and the branch buddies, told them where they could get their dry cleaning, where they could go out to lunch, who you should never confide personal stuff to, at that branch. And so we took an assessment and we moved staff to balance talent. People think that's like could never happen, but then it's good. I also created something called the Quality Program Initiative, and I've presented on this all around the country. Quality Program Initiative was too many times programs are done by an old folder that sat in the filing cabinet for 20 years, and they don't even know why they do it. Let's have a butterfly program and they make butterflies. It's not outcomes based. It's not establishing the parent as first and best teacher, teaching letter sounds, doing fine motor grip to pick up butterflies or whatever. So what I did was created a thing where 2 times a year, a librarian would create a program, fully create it. They would list how it meets the strategic goals. They would list the audience, who they should talk to, possible partners in the community. They would make flyers and include the flyer. They would bring in a partner who would agree to share system-wide with the other branches if they did the same program. It would have the marketing attached to it. And they would talk to me about the program, and I established a little budget so they could each buy, STEM stuff or whatever they needed for the program. Then they posted them in a database. I always thought it was silly that there were, 38 branches, 38 librarians creating a Valentine's Day story time, when you would just get somebody who was really good at it and they would create this polished product and post it, and then they could use it. There was some dissension on that in the beginning. they're like, well, we're already doing quality because we named it Quality Program Initiative. And it's like, well, yes, but this just makes sure that everyone is doing quality. And they were kind of negative about it in the beginning because the director wanted me to rush the presentation as opposed to take it longer. But then we relaxed a little bit, and people were very excited. They were proud to do one of those programs, and I've spoken that like that all around the country. QPI. The professionalism and trust says that we have quality people and they do quality work. Let's give them a chance. If 38 librarians are creating Valentine's Day programs, then there's too much busy work. So it's about workplace efficiencies and sharing and creating together with a level of enthusiasm and feeling like important and blessed that they could share that with their colleagues. And the same thing with the people moving to new locations. They're like, and you're going to mentor this person because we trust you and you're a leader. Negative reaction at first, and then everybody felt really important by those changes.
Thank you. Next question, number 5, Trustee Ruff.
Good morning, Lisa. Thank you for being here. I'm Tammy Ruff. Question 5 is, can you share a time when you received constructive feedback from a supervisor, board, or community stakeholder? How did you respond, and how did it improve your performance or leadership approach?
Okay, so I'm a very creative, innovative, energetic person. I like to do a lot of good projects. I love winning ULC Urban Library Council Innovation Awards. I've won many and top innovator awards. When people come to me with problems, I like to solve them. I like to write a grant and get them money. I've done a lot of amazing things through grants. I built a college club for non-native families and juniors and seniors because 90% of non-native kids identify as college intending in fall, but only 10% go the following year to college. And I get all wrapped up in these ideas. And they said, you know, my boss always said, Lisa, you do amazing work. You can. And I said, what do you mean by can? And she goes, I tell you a problem. I'm worried about the kids in low-income, non-native families, diverse families. And I go out, figure out the idea, I get the funding, I train the staff, I create the implementation plan, I work with the staff together, we implement it, it's successful, I evaluate it, and I share with other libraries. But I say I can too much. And she said, I'm so proud that I was working 12-hour days, 6 days a week. There are lots of great opportunities in the world, and there are lots of people who would benefit from assistance, and there are lots of things the library can do. But we have to be realistic, and we have to prioritize both in our idea time and our work time, and create that work-life balance, and in our responsibility to community, so we do things right and we're getting the most important things done instead of jumping on the bandwagon. There was a thing, everybody started doing the story times where people would leave their stuffed animals, and the stuffed animals would have activities at night and stuff. We take pictures. And I'm like, but wait a minute. Summer learning's coming up, and that's a much bigger thing. We need to concentrate. So I remember to prioritize. I look at the strategic plan and I see how all these ideas work with what we need to accomplish. If we have where did that go? One thing got covered up. I think your reading proficiency is about 44%. And you're doing a little bit slightly below better than the state, slightly below national and national standards. And we need to be, teaching parents that are the first best teachers, that children are doing, learning to read and reading to learn, that they're fulfilling their own outcomes, and that I need to prioritize and put the money I have on the things that are going to have the biggest impact in the community. So I really worked to do that. I came up with a number of ways to do that, and I even got involved in a larger way. I was the consultant for Demco that introduced badging and being able to get prizes for activities. A little bit back when summer learning software was just recording pages. Because I looked at what our community needed, they needed to learn in the summer because teachers retaught for about 11 weeks. Nationally, it's about 7 weeks. So it affected my approach in saying, is what I'm doing vital to the institution and to this community? And though I'd like to do every project in the world, and I try to work enough hours to do it, you don't want to burn out, and you have to look at the realities of your budget. Go out and get more money if you can with grants to fulfill those great ideas, but prioritize based on our strategic plan. 6 and 7 might need to be a little shorter.
Okay. Question number 6, I will take this one. Lisa, this role requires strong financial oversight and accountability to the public. How do you approach difficult budget decisions while maintaining transparency, trust, and alignment with the library's mission and board expectations?
Well, it's like I said, the budget is the strategic framework for the organization. You create a strategic plan, which is your goals and objectives. And then the budget is the way that you enact that. It enables your strategic plan. So when I look at it, I look at my budget, and that's what I said about starting anew. There might be a whole bunch of expenses that we have that don't relate to that strategic plan. So we create workplace efficiencies, or we introduce automation, or we take a different tack in the way we're moving on something. So the strategic budget enables the strategic plan. And our budget becomes a sustainable vision. So we look at next year, but we also look at 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. At Broward County Library, the big, huge library, my job was budget forecasting as part of the executive team. I looked at what staff we needed to hire, what buildings we needed to build. And if you don't look at those things, pretty soon you're going to be going off track and having arguments about budgets because the county doesn't believe you're using your funds wisely. We educate each other on how we use them. So to maintain transparency and trust and alignment, I'm very proactive. My budgets are always zero-sum budgets with full budget justifications that shows how I get my numbers and the strategic thought behind it. I build budgets with extra sheets so staff can encumber purchases. So I always have a day-to-day understanding of what's being spent and are we meeting our goals in spending. And that trust, so I understand what people are spending and there's not a big crisis at the end of the year, so people haven't spent their budget or met their goals. I work with, I don't know if you have a county CFO, but I would work with the county CFO and say, are our strategic visions reflected in both of our budgets? And look for their input into that. And then I look at, the needs of key partners and what their budgets are covering and where we may need not to invest. So it's those strategic priorities. I use strategic gap analysis. I've become kind of a well-known person on gap analysis. Gap analysis says this is where we are and this is where we need to be. This is the goal. This is the implementation plan for the strategic plan. How do we get through that space in between? How do we break down barriers? How do we achieve these things? And we create the steps for doing that as part of our budget plan and a financial infrastructure that leads to that decision making. And since it's the library's mission and board expectations are for the strategic plan, it's aligned from start to finish.
We will now go to, thank you. We'll now go to question number 7, Vice Chair Moser.
Thank you, Vice Chair Moser, for the record. The director must set a bold vision, ensuring operational excellence across 12 branches and diverse service areas. How would you balance long-term strategic planning with day-to-day operational demands?
Again, my favorite thing, the strategic plan is an active and flexible plan that says this is where we are and this is where we need to be and how to get there. So emphasizing that at every branch and throughout all of our decision making is very important. And making sure, operational excellence is a requirement. It's the basic part of it. It's not something we hope for sometime in the future. It's something that we embrace every single day. And each person, I always say, I like my staff to be able to walk up and say, what do you do that makes the library successful? And they should, in 1 to 2 sentences, be able to articulate that to you. And so we have that kind of joint understanding in that team building, like I talked about for our 3 priorities. And, so that our long-term strategic planning, but flexible, inspirational, achievable, and filled with gap analysis. So we're breaking that plan down into bits that happen every day. We start with an environmental scan. I have every branch complete or neighborhood complete an environmental scan, which includes the problems, the separate, it's not just community need, it's neighborhood need. You often have racial disparities in education, neighborhood disparities in education. So each branch has got to address that. And so we have our environmental scan, which looks at our partners, our budget, what we're doing in each branch, an implementation plan that talks about our challenges and brings them to fruition. And then a series of fundraising, organizational diversity plans, staffing plans, facilities plans that keep us going day to day.
Thank you. Lisa, thank you for being here. Thank you for answering all these questions. We very much appreciate your responses. I think I don't have anything in front of me that gives me the procedure, but other than to show tremendous gratitude and thanks for your time interviewing.
If I can just say one thing, I'm very excited about this job. This job is my first choice of what I want to do. I'm excited about the community. I'm excited about you guys and the potential of working together to build greatness. And I don't think that's a too high of an outcome. And like I said, this is my gift to the community. What I bring in my work is what I give to the community. And I want to do that for you. I want to work together and create that success. It's what it's all about. It's what brings me joy.
Well, thank you. Thank you for expressing your joy and bringing your talent and to this interview process. We appreciate your travel and wish you the best. Thank you very much, Lisa.
You all guys, I'll enjoy listening to me, and I look forward if I move on to meeting and learning about all of you.
Thank you again. Thank you, Lisa.
For the record, Julie Paholke. The schedule is to have 15 minutes in between candidate, but the next candidate is ready if you'd like to move forward to the second interview, or if you'd like to wait 15 minutes, it's up to you.
Any comments from? We're good to go?
All right.
Thank you. The next candidate is Caprice Roberson. Good morning, Caprice Roberson. Am I saying that correctly?
Robertson, nice to meet you.
Okay. The interviews are 45 minutes. The candidates have 7 questions. To get started, we would like you to take the first 5 minutes for you to introduce yourself to the Library Board of Trustees.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you all for having me today. It is a pleasure to be here. And I'm glad to have the chance to talk to you about this role and about the future of Washoe County Library System. So my name again, Caprice Robertson. Libraries have been a through line of my professional life. I started my library career shelving books at the old Gibson Library in Henderson, which at the time was in downtown Henderson, across from the courthouse and near an elementary school. And it was there that I experienced the profound role that libraries will have in the community. Those early experiences shaped how I think about the role that libraries play within the community, beyond books as places of access, of learning, and places of community gathering. Those early experiences inspired me to go to library school. I later became an academic librarian where I worked closely with students and faculty, which deepened my understanding of how libraries support learning across all stages of life. As my career progressed, my roles transitioned from direct service into leadership and operational work. At College of Southern Nevada, I served as director of libraries. I led a multi-branch system with responsibility for staffing, for budgets, for facility planning, and strategic direction. That included implementing a new library services platform, overseeing planning and construction for a new library building, and creating leadership opportunities to help staff grow and advance within the organization. From there, I moved into senior operational leadership roles in higher education. I served as an associate and assistant vice president. I served in associate and assistant vice president positions, focused on large-scale organizational strategy, governance, and operational improvement. Those roles strengthened my ability to think at the systems level, balancing long-term vision with the practical realities of budgets, policies, and cross-functional collaboration. Much of my work has focused on helping organizations navigate change in a way that feels clear and sustainable. Most recently, at Toledo Lucas County Public Library, I served as Director of Inclusion and Engagement. That role allowed me to focus on organizational culture and workforce strategy across a large system of 20 branches with nearly 400 employees. I led a system-wide cultural assessment and helped translate that into a practical roadmap to help strengthen engagement, collaboration, and accountability. Through all of my roles, I have led in a people-centered way with empathy and in service of the organization's mission. I see leadership as stewardship, making sure that the organization is strong while positioning it well for the future. I believe that when staff have clear expectations, thoughtful planning, and the resources they need to succeed, that they're able to do their best work and I am able to do my best work. Equity and inclusion are also integrated into how I approach leadership, whether through hiring practices, service and policy design, or everyday decision-making. I am excited about what the Washoe County Library System's focus on literacy, digital access, community connection, and creating welcome spaces for all. I also appreciate that the system is thinking strategically and focusing on outreach, technology, and adopting current innovation in a changing community. On a personal note, Nevada has been an important part of my professional and personal journey, and the idea of returning to serve communities here is very meaningful to me. This role calls for both vision and operational leadership, and my background has prepared me to guide day-to-day operations while partnering closely with boards, community stakeholders, and staff to ensure strong, sustainable service. Thank you for the opportunity. Looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you for the introduction, Caprice. I will start with the first question.
Sure.
The library director reports directly to and is evaluated by the Board of Trustees. How would you build an effective working relationship with the board that is responsible for your performance, achievement of stated objectives, and approval of the strategic plan?
Sure. So I think this goes to relationship building, which is core to really everything that you do, is really understanding what the expectations are of each of our roles. What is your expectation of the director? And as the director, what is my expectation of the board? And what do we each expect that working relationship to look like on the day to day? Everything is really about relationship building, which happens through open communication. It happens through conversation. And it happens again just through clear expectation. And so I think, especially with some of the history, it's really important that become one of the first things that, that we work on is what are expectations of the board for the director, and then what can the director then expect through the board, from the board.
All right, I will pass the second question to Vice Chair Moser.
Thank you, Vice Chair Moser, for the record. Question 2, given recent personnel changes and budget challenges that have impacted the Washoe County Library System, what specific steps would you take in your first 6 to 12 months to restore confidence among staff, the board, and library users?
So I think this is in alignment with what anybody should do when they become new to a position, which is go on a listening tour. You don't know, when you step into a new role, you don't really know everything about the role, obviously. And it's really important to spend a lot of time getting to know people, building relationships, and really listening. And this would be building, again, relationships with the board, building relationships with the community, and especially building relationships with the staff to rebuild that trust, which is really important. If you have a staff who does not believe in their leadership, it is hard to get anything done. And so that is really going to be key to what the next director does, is really stepping in and doing that. At my last role at Toledo Lucas County Public Libraries, that was one of the challenges that they had, was there was very little, it felt like there was a disconnect between executive leadership and the staff. And so when I walked into that role, I spent a lot of time, most of that time that I was there, going around to each of the 20 branches and talking to nearly all of the staff that work there, and really understanding what it was that they wanted from the leadership, and really just helping clear up a lot of misconceptions about what that, what was happening on either side or what that looked like. And so I do believe that when you step into a new role, it's really incumbent upon you to spend a lot of time listening and learning about what is happening before you take any action. For the community, this is a good opportunity. The strategic plan has just timed out last year. 2025 was the end of it. You're presumably starting a new strategic planning cycle. And that's a really good time to sit down and listen to the community and understand what community expectations are. And it's a good time to say, this is a reset for us, right? We're starting a new plan. We have new leadership. This is an opportunity for us to really talk about what the community needs and what the community can expect, and what how the library can best serve the community through listening sessions, through surveys, through different mechanisms. And then I guess the same thing with the board, again, that communication and really understanding, what the board's expectations are, and how those align with the goals and the mission of the library moving forward. And all of this, you just demonstrate through action, right? So I can have the conversations, I can say the right things, but really the thing that's going to build the trust is that repeated, consistent action of seeing this director take steps to, advance the mission of the libraries and to support the community and the staff.
Thank you. Question number 3, to be asked by Trustee Jacks.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
Question 3 is, Washoe County prepares to welcome a new library director. What do you believe are the top 3 priorities for the organization, and why?
So I think the last question alluded to this, but it's that rebuilding of trust. I think that's really key, both from the community and from the staff and from the board. And so I think that's something that the next person who's stepping in here, that's going to be a challenge that they face. And I think that's something that they really have to focus on as one of the priorities for the upcoming year. I think going back to the core mission of the library, really bringing that front and center, and connecting to your community with that core mission is really going to be important. And so really articulating that focus on what are the core values and mission of the library? What are the services that we need to be providing? What are we really here for? And what should we be spending our time and energy focusing on, and really setting the course for that. And as we already mentioned a little bit, the strategic plan, it's time for a new strategic plan. And again, I think that's a really good opportunity to kind of reset to everybody to get on the same page about what the shared goals are, and what the action plan is for, the upcoming next 3, 4, or 5 years, however long the strategic plan goes for.
All right, question number 4, Trustee Rodriguez.
Question 4, describe how you approach conflict with subordinates, board members, and members of the public. Please provide an example that demonstrates your ability to navigate sensitive or high-profile situations while maintaining professionalism and trust.
Sure. So conflict is inevitable. We're all humans who have different needs, who have different wants, and we're just going to face this. And it's really about, I have found that listening, understanding what the conflict is, understanding what the needs are. It's really important to just listen and make sure that people feel heard before you move on to the next step. And sometimes that's all people need, is they just need the opportunity to listen and feel heard and feel like, their feedback was taken into consideration. One specifically, the situation that I faced when I was at Bowling Green State University, the board mandated an academic portfolio review. And the board was very interested in ensuring that we were using funds in the most responsible and effective, efficient way possible. And when you have the board who is really concerned about how we're spending money, you have faculty who are going to be directly affected by these reviews and possibly losing their program or whatever that means for their research. You have students who are coming to the university for these specific programs. So you have competing interests. And there was another local university who was also cutting out programs. And so there was a lot of attention from the public on us as well. And so you have a lot of competing interests. You're talking about people's lives and their livelihoods. And it's really important just to stay communicative. A lot of what I found is that a lot of assumptions can be made when communication is not open and transparent. And people tend to fill that with the things that they think, or feel are true. And so it's really important just to stay transparent and to stay communicative about what the goal is, how you're going to approach that goal, and what ultimately the outcomes can be. And sometimes, I want to live in a world where everything is good for all of us all the time, but it's not. Sometimes those are going to negatively affect people. And I think we have to be honest with folks about that, when things are going to come down that will have an effect on people's lives. So again, I just think it's really important about staying open, staying transparent, and making sure that everybody's voices are heard and they feel like everybody can be part of the conversation.
Thank you. We'll move on to question 5, Trustee Ruff.
Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'm Tammy Ruff. Question 5. Can you share a time when you received constructive feedback from a supervisor, board, or community stakeholder? How did you respond, and how did it improve your performance or leadership approach?
Sure. So a specific example, when I first became the director of libraries, I had a couple personnel issues that were really, had been boiling over for a little bit of time. And when I was talking to my supervisor about it then, he really said focus on the people. He demonstrated very well saying, first and foremost, what is going on with this human, with this person that is affecting, the way that they're working. And that really, I would say really set a course for me and really thinking about the individuals, in really all contexts, both my, direct reports, but also my supervisor, the community members, library users, really thinking about them as people. Going back to the last question, when you have conflict, it's because, them as a human, there's something, that is not working for them, right? And so really thinking about the humans behind a lot of these things and really keeping that front and center. In general, you learn better, you do better. So I've always welcomed the feedback because sometimes you don't know what you're not doing well. And it's really important to get the feedback from community members, from your staff as well, from, board, from your supervisor, so that so that you can move forward and you can do better. And I really do try to take those lessons with me as I move forward into my work.
All right, thank you. Question number 6, I'll take. Ann Silver. This role requires strong financial oversight and accountability to the public. How do you approach difficult budget decisions while maintaining transparency, trust, and alignment with the library's mission and board expectations?
Sure. So having almost always worked in public service, it's really important that we are good fiscal stewards of the community funds, right? If folks feel like, these are funds that I'm putting forward to help a community resource, then they want to see that these funds are being used in a way that seems fiscally responsible to them. The library is going to face some budget challenges here coming up. And so I think it's really important focusing again on those core services. What are the things that what is core to what we need to be doing? And are we allocating most of our resources towards making sure that those things continue to happen? Again, supporting whatever the strategic plan is, whatever goals and objectives end up coming out of that, and in agreement with the board, the plan, the mission, the vision, the strategic plan should be, a group effort that's agreed upon by everybody. And so that's how you articulate, with the board, here are the goals that we have set together. How are we allocating resources to make sure that those goals are actually met and achieved? Yes.
Okay, question number 7. I'll turn to Vice Chair Moser.
Thank you, Vice Chair Moser, for the record. The director must set a bold vision while ensuring operational excellence across 12 branches and diverse service areas. How would you balance long-term strategic planning with day-to-day operational demands?
Sure. You get stuck in you can get stuck in the day-to-day if you're not really thinking long-term about things. And so I understand the question. The things come up and you just focus on what needs to be done today. In past positions, what's really been important to me is creating, again, having a strategic plan, but calendaring that, understanding where you're at in that process, when it needs to happen. And then in addition to just having the strategic plan, creating an assessment plan for that, which is often where your timeline will live. So a lot of places I've worked, you create a strategic plan, it sits on a shelf, we revisit it when it ends and say, what did we do or not do? Instead of having it live like that, have it be a living document that is assigned to individuals as appropriate, and you're constantly going back and looking at where we at on goal, 1, objective B, so that you can keep moving forward in that longer term strategic, the longer term strategic planning, and not get bogged down necessarily in the day to day. I think for the day to day, it's also really important to have a really strong leadership team that you're able to lean on, and that will, again, support the mission of the library and can make decisions and can lead, so that you can focus on some of the longer term strategic planning.
Just finishing writing. Any other questions from my colleagues? Not? Caprice, thank you so much for taking the time to present yourself and to answer our questions. We really appreciate that. We wish you well in this process.
Thank you. Do I have time for questions or?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So I just, you alluded to it a little bit in your questions, but how do you expect the relationship moving forward to work with the director and board, just kind of based on some of the events of the last couple of years?
Better.
Good. Better how?
I would ask my colleagues to respond if they have comments.
Trustee Ruff, for the record, I would say more collaboratively.
Okay.
I think that is kind of the key that we're looking for. It felt a little bit perhaps in the past where we weren't clear on the vision and how the vision was going to be achieved, and really even what our role was in supporting that vision. So I mean, for me, I'm just answering for me.
Yep.
That's kind of what I see. Thank you for the question.
Yes. And, you know, a lot of my work, especially with, I mean, if you've known a librarian, you've known a collaborator, libraries are, you know, big on collaboration. I've always led through collaboration and teamwork and would look forward to working with the board in that manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Tricia Hurley, Human Resources. I'll be taking over for Julie. She had to leave for a family emergency. So again, the same question. We do give 15 minutes in between each candidate, but didn't know if you needed those 15 minutes. If not, we can pull the third and last candidate to walk down, and they should be here in a few minutes. What would your preference be?
Would you all mind if we took a 5-minute break?
So maybe in about 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
Okay, we'll have them
Thank you.
geared up and ready. Thank you.
Where's the rest?
Oh.
In the lobby. Okay.
Okay.
Restroom.
I love not being at the office. I could sit here all day. Anything but taxes today.
I think you should run it off. We're trying to find out if we can move public comments to before we vote. You don't have to. You don't have to. You can abstain. Yeah, that's my feeling. I'm waiting for her.
We had no choices. You did the way I felt for us, but then we didn't get kicked out ourselves. Yes. Well, I mean, you know, I mean, I know what it means to be a librarian as far as the applicants. Yeah. So we can? Okay, good.
I think I'll announce that.
Okay, that's great.
We will reconvene.
It's because it's somewhat out of the ordinary.
I'm going to announce it right now. I do have an announcement to make with the permission of our deputy DA. The board has requested that following the interview with the third candidate, we move to public comment before we deliberate on the three candidates. So we will proceed with candidate number 3, Tammy Westergaard.
Vice Chair Moser, and just for clarification, deliberate is not the right term. We will cast a vote without deliberating as a board. Am I right? Herb, is that correct?
Well, there will be deliberation and
Oh, so,
A
okay,
vote.
because Patricia had just said we would just cast a vote.
so maybe some clarification from
Okay.
Hang on, Mr. Solero. Ms. Westergaard, hang on, sorry.
We actually hope that you all
We all hope that you will deliberate on the qualifications of the candidates as you've heard them today. There will not be a time for you to ask the candidates additional questions, however, but amongst yourselves, you've asked the questions, you've got your information. That will culminate with a ballot process, and is the way we will do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
But just to reiterate, we've asked that the public comment period be prior to our deliberations.
That is the way we understand it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, welcome, Ms. Westergaard. Thank you for being here. We will give you 5 minutes for you to introduce yourself to us, and then we will proceed with our questions of you. So you have the floor.
Great. Good morning. For the record, my name is Tammy Westergaard. So good morning, Chair, trustees, and members of the public. I'm a Nevada librarian and a public sector executive with more than 20 years of experience leading libraries and statewide initiatives at the intersection of public service, economic development, and governance. I was raised in Northern Nevada. For me and my family, Washoe County is home. The long-term strength of the library system matters to me personally and professionally. I've come to understand libraries as coordinated systems. They're not simply buildings or collections. They're integrated networks of branches, staff, policy, facilities, technology, and community partnerships. If one part of the budget is reduced, something else has to adjust. Staffing, open hours, materials, or programs. When these pieces are no longer balanced, the public feels it right away. My leadership has focused on restoring and sustaining that alignment, so services remain predictable, financially responsible, and trusted. I began my public career in economic development with Carson City, working on downtown revitalization. I later served as deputy director of the Carson City Library and the interim director while completing my master's in library and information science. During the planning of a new downtown library in Carson City, the advisory question didn't pass. I stepped in as interim director during that transition and led through a politically sensitive period requiring stability, transparency, and disciplined communication. That experience shaped how I lead, steady, clear, and grounded in data. More recently, I served as Nevada State Librarian. Now I serve as the Senior Workforce Development Librarian in Residence with the Governor's Office of Economic Development. In that role, I oversee a multi-agency initiative connecting libraries and education, workforce systems, and economic partners statewide, nationally, and internationally. I believe deeply in strategic planning, not as compliance, but as a governance discipline. It guides budget development and board decision-making. It is reviewed regularly and in active implementation. Directorship also has to serve as a visible and trusted community ambassadorship, strengthening partnerships with local governments, schools, nonprofits, cultural organizations, workforce partners, and civic leaders to expand the library's reach and impact. So to today's present context. The current budget is roughly $17 million annually and escalated expectations for classified salary increases. Since the $1.3 million of that is frozen, the library's actual spending power is limited. This has forced the materials budget down to just 4.5% of spending, which is well below the board's own goals. To manage these costs, the county and board have had to make across-the-board cuts to service hours. These cuts aren't about a difference in opinion. They're about a math problem that doesn't add up. The core challenge is matching the money coming in with what it actually costs to run these buildings safely and to meet the public's expectations. While cutting these hours saves roughly between $175,000 and $250,000 a year, it doesn't solve the gap in the materials budget. Nevada's broader policy context reinforces strained economic realities. At its 2025 forums in Reno and Las Vegas, the Gwynn Center reported that Reno participants ranked economic and fiscal policy as their top research priority for the first time. Funding and revenue were identified as primary barriers to policy progress. Nevada libraries operate within this economic landscape. Residents are having affordability pressures, workforce transitions, and rapid technology change. If selected, my leadership would be grounded in 4 principles. First, turn our financial data into decision support tool that makes every trade-off clear. The report from the Assistant County Manager last October shows us the why behind our current limits. I see my role as taking these data points and making them the center of our conversations with the county. My second priority is meeting professional standards to keep the public's trust. This simply means that the way we manage our money and the way we run the library system has to work together. When our budget matches our official goals, it proves to the taxpayers that we're focused on delivering high-quality library system that they expect. Third, steady and transparent leadership. I lead calmly, communicate clearly.
Thank
and
you,
I'll-
Ms. Westergaard. I
Oh.
have to stop you at this time.
Okay, thanks.
No
Sorry
problem.
about that.
All right, I will begin with the first of 7 questions. The library director reports directly to and is evaluated by the Board of Trustees. How would you build an effective working relationship with a board that is responsible for your performance, achievement of stated objectives, and approval of the strategic plan?
Thank you for that question. It's a good one. Communication is key to any kind of relationship. And I think the first thing that I would do is reaffirm the governance boundaries early to understand about the policies on delegation of authority, budget modification authority, and service reduction authority. Those would be the places I begin.
Thank you. We'll move on to question number 2, Vice Chair Moser.
Thank you. Vice Chair Moser for the record. Given recent personnel challenges and recent personnel changes and budget challenges that have impacted the Washoe County Library System, what specific steps would you take in your first 6 to 12 months to restore confidence among staff, the board, and library users?
Thank you for the question. I'd verify the fiscal baseline and staffing capacity. I would stabilize service reliability and prepare the groundwork for a compliant and realistic strategic plan. My goal would be clarity before change.
Thank you. We'll move on to question 3, Trustee Jacks.
Okay, question 3. As Washoe County prepares to welcome a new library director, what do you believe should be the top 3 priorities for the organization and why?
Okay. I think restoring operational predictability is very important because when the community knows what it can count on, trust is restored. I think aligning services to the current recurring revenue is critical because we can't move forward with strategic planning until we know exactly what those boundaries look like. And then finally, to work with the board to deliver a very realistic and broadly looking strategic plan.
Thank you. Moving on, Trustee Rodriguez.
Describe how you approach conflict with subordinates, board members, and members of the public. And please provide an example that demonstrates your ability to navigate sensitive or high-profile situations while maintaining professionalism and trust.
Great. I prioritize shared outcomes when they're over professional friction. As state librarian, I encountered difficult situations that a couple of times caught national attention, and I was able to deflect intervention from outside parties that participation would actually have inflamed the situation versus help it.
Thank you. Question number 5, Trustee Ruff.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm Tammy Ruff. Can you share a time when you received constructive feedback from a supervisor, board, or community stakeholder? And how did you respond? And how did it improve your performance or leadership approach?
That is a great question. So when partners or projects drift, I often use data to bring everybody back to a baseline to reinstate what the shared goals are. and to remind us of where we are in the moment and what next steps can we take to begin again. This was especially evident when I was in Carson City and the interim library director and that advisory question failed, and the Carson City Library's vision for a new facility wasn't realized. So that was a lot of feedback that came from the community, and we were able to look within and see what kind of opportunities to actually implement some of the pieces that the facility would have enabled at a bigger scale and still be able to do that within the physical plant that exists. And that's exactly what we did. And I believe one of the keys to that was to engage for the first time ever in the municipal history in Carson City, the Carson City School Board, the Library Board, and the Board of Supervisors into regular aligned meetings that talked about what the goals were for the community, especially in terms of education and lifelong learning. And that really helped. And it actually continues to fuel the success of the Carson City Library today.
Thank you. I will take question number 6. This role requires strong financial oversight and accountability to the public. How do you approach difficult budget decisions while maintaining transparency, trust, and alignment with the library's mission and board expectations?
Right. Well, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. Looking at the data points that have already been provided as a toolkit for how to move forward will lend itself to bringing a lot of clarity to how we make decisions within the system, because there are always trade-offs.
Thank you. Question number 7, posed by Vice Chair Moser.
Thank you. The director must set a bold vision while ensuring operational excellence across 12 branches and diverse service areas. How would you balance long-term strategic planning with day-to-day operational demands?
That's a great question. So first, regarding vision. So responsible innovation is something that is very important in this era that is shaped by artificial intelligence and economic complexity. Libraries have to ensure residents have access to reliable information, digital literacy, and pathways to opportunity. So innovation should strengthen relevance and public value, not distract from core services. This system has a very strong staff with wonderfully engaged trustees, philanthropic support, and a community that clearly values it. It takes an entire team to maintain operations while seeking input and charting forward on a strategic plan. And so the answer to the question is you do both at the same time. Just goes with the territory.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? I'm sorry. Any comments that you may have or questions, Ms. Westergaard?
Well, I guess if this is my only chance, right, I do want to share one little reflection. That I believe that this system is at a pivot point. We're facing fiscal constraint, operational strain, governance scrutiny, and an expired strategic framework all at the same time. That's not a routine leadership assignment. It requires steadiness, it requires clarity, and it requires disciplined execution. I've led through fiscal constraint. I've operated under Nevada's statutory and legislative frameworks. I've written and implemented compliant strategic plans, and I have stabilized multi-branch systems in moments when predictability mattered more than expansion. So if selected, my commitment is simple: restore operational predictability, align services to recurring revenue, deliver a realistic, compliant strategic plan, and rebuild trust with staff and the county and the public. It's not about dramatic change. It's about disciplined reset, moving forward with momentum.
Thank you very much, Ms. Westergaard. We appreciate your time and your responses. And We wish you well in this process. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, you call public comments
Yes. Yes.
happening.
As indicated before, we are going to move, slightly alter the agenda with the permission of our Deputy DA. We are going to delay the direction to staff regarding the negotiation of an employment contract and move to public comment. At the time, we have 3 public comments. Are there others who wish to make public comment? If so, can we ask you to sign in with the clerk? If not, are my colleagues fine with proceeding to public comment?
And
All right.
Madam Chair, Herb Kaplan for the
Yes, sir.
record. Let me just clarify.
Yes.
So the open meeting law requires either you have a public comment period before you take any action items and before adjournment, or you can have public comment on any action items. Traditionally, this board has opted for option 1. You can have a combination of the two. So what I'm suggesting that we're doing here is that we're actually taking public comment, and you can say that we're taking public comment under item 7, but really it's public comment under item 6. It's a combination under public comment on a specific agenda item. That comment should be specific to that agenda item, whereas under general public comment, people can generally say anything about anything. So I think what you're looking to do is have public comment that is more expansive. It doesn't need to be limited to this agenda item to encompass item 7 as well.
I'm not sure I understand the distinction, but I understand. I appreciate what you're saying. So we will take public comment that is any type of public comment on any agenda item or non-agenda item. All right.
Correct.
Are there additional people willing to, or who wish to step forward? If so, I will conduct public comment now. The first individual is Valerie Wade.
Valerie Wade for the record. I signed up for public comments very specific to what you've just been discussing. And that was after the discussion that happened after or before the candidates came down and started to speak. So I'm kind of addressing that too. Today is the day to make this decision. That's how I feel about it. You heard from 2 library directors who came down that have decades and decades of it. They're retired and they have decades and decades of experience. And what I think that tells us is that today is the day that you at this board have the choice to make this decision today for the future library director. But the library system goes on all the time. There are directors that come, there are directors that go, there are hundreds of employees, hundreds of volunteers that are working towards this library system. And you are volunteering for the position that you're in now. And today is the day, and the task in front of you today is to make this decision today. So I would urge you to look at the strategic direction that the county goes in, use the experience and the knowledge that the Washoe County Human Resources Department has, that the consultant that you hired and paid probably with taxpayer dollars, I assume, to do this recruitment process, rely on them and their understanding of recruitment, of library systems, of federal and state employment laws, and how interviewing and recruitment processes are required to be in terms of those laws and those procedures and those processes. You have 3 very distinct qualified candidates that have gone through multiple processes to get to this podium right here. So I would urge you, do not delay, make your decision today, and go forward. Go forward. It's been a year that you've been without a director. Let this whole system move forward with one of the candidates that you have now. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate Salim.
Kate Salim for the record. First, I would like to thank DA Kaplan for the correction regarding the meetings that took place. My primary concern has been with the adding of the, or the changing of the job description for the director. Regarding the references issue, I've been, as previously stated, I'm a Washoe County employee. I've been a Washoe County employee for 26 years. I've sat on a number of interview boards, and it has always been with the understanding, and those boards have been for Washoe County, that prior to the final offer of the job, that references would be checked at that point. We would interview the individuals, we would state our top person, and then maybe our second choice. And then at that point, references are requested and the final offer has been made. I believe that was also the case for the county commission or the county manager. The other issue with it is there were meetings that took place with CPS firm, HR, prior to this meeting where these issues should have been hashed out. Making assumptions doesn't fall into place with this kind of a procedure. You should be asking questions to get clarification prior to walking into this room. These three individuals, two of which traveled a very long way, deserve to have their decision today. They've come before you, and you should also be trusting your firm that you hired with county money, with taxpayer dollars to do the job. They have a process, they put forth the candidates, and you should respect their process. We have three very knowledgeable and strong candidates, three very different personalities and backgrounds, and I hope that the board will make their decision this morning and will make an informed decision based on the interviews as well as their resumes and letters. I've reviewed all three of them and find all three candidates very impressive. And I've heard their interviews this morning and find those very impressive. And I think you have a very difficult job forward or ahead of you with making a final decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Cliff Nellis.
Greetings, board. Cliff Nellis for the record, 50-year resident, probably 52-year, I think, Washoe County. Proud father of 4 young women who were born here and raised here. And I'm concerned about our community. I'm concerned about the young people here. And that's why I'm here. And I don't really have any opinion on the candidates. So I'm not going to tell you anything in that direction. And you have a decision here to make whether or not you're going to vote today or you're going to open this up to the community for more community input, which I would advise you to do. It looks like we have a problem, not just with the library board. You know, most of you guys are Democrats or left leaning, but the whole Washoe County looks like. I think the percentage of people that work for Washoe County that are Democrat are somewhere around 90%. So, and there's the problem of inefficiency that usually goes along with the Democrat Party. So, I mean, I had a business in Washoe County for 43 years, and when I had applicants, I always checked the references. And if some guy said, "Oh, I don't want my boss to know," and I said, "Okay, I won't check him, but I'm going to check your other references, your previous employers before that." It's just common sense. I just don't. It just beyond my imagination how they could be that dumb. But, oh well. It's a Democrat-run operation, just like our registrar of voters. I've been trying to tell the county commission that. You know, I hope you guys make the right decision. You know, I hope who the new director is can be fair and impartial, like these candidates said they were going to be. And one thing I want to point out too is that, you know, you can't mix oil and water. People who are sex perverts or sexually, they don't control their sexual urges. you can't mix those people with normal people who know how to do that. You know, and these people running our libraries are in that category. A person's, my opinion is, yes. And so the other thing too, I just want to, it really annoys me, this land acknowledgement thing. You guys read this thing? Do you know what it really means? You know what is going on in British Columbia right now? They're giving the land to the Indians. Yeah. Like it's some island up there, there's a big Amazon warehouse, and now they said, oh, you don't even own your own land, and a bunch of other places. It's a Marxist thing. We're coming up on the 50th anniversary, and we're celebrating our country, and we're saying we stole the land from the Indians? Baloney, hogwash. Let's take that out of there. That's more leftist garbage, like all these radicals sitting behind me. I had one woman just staring at me.
Mr. Nellis, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Next, George E. Lee.
George Lee for the record. I appreciated Tammy Westergaard, sorry. I came here to listen to you guys talk about the process, how you were, because you put this legal impediment between you and the process, you were unable to ask questions like, what are the social positions of these people? Meaning, are they married? Do they have kids? I know that there's laws. The HR department lives and thrives on those laws. But are they going to be able to move here? Are they going to, is it going to break up their relationship? Are they capable of being here in any kind of lasting position? You know, they may sign a contract, but if their life situation changes, who knows? You know, it's up for grabs, right? But you can't ask those questions. The second thing is, you guys were handed a pig and a poke. Somebody else decided for you what the candidate ranking was going to be, and you didn't personally interview in public the people who did the choosing. And namely, Melinda, whatever her name is. You guys took it on, you know, the company that you signed a contract for to go out and find somebody. You took it on them to have a base of success with the person who was going to do that deciding. In other words, their information base. It's like the AI. You know, AI, I think it was ChatGPT, was asked to draw a photograph of the founding fathers, and they were all black in the photograph because it supplied, you know, what it knew, because it was fed bad information. It's ego, it's garbage in, garbage out. That lived on what the internet told them. Well, do you even know what the position of Melinda is? Do you have any idea what her goals are? What she's longstanding in the industry, but we had Jeff here for too long. No comment, huh? No dirty looks, nothing like that. Anyway, what we're after here is we're after somebody who's going to be
Thank you.
good.
Appreciate it. Sandy Tibbet.
Sandy Tibbet for the record. Okay, so I still feel the same as I did before. You've done your 3 interviews, so you don't need to re-interview them. We could just bring however many were left in the 12 candidates. I would still like to see what we're missing, because I feel like the bar was set pretty low with the 3 that we saw, honestly. Caprice, what? She has 3 years, the longest at a job. And Tammy Westergaard, as I said, I am reluctant to support her because, you know, the whole political side of it. But scrubbing the internet, looking for it, she doesn't appear to have any inklings towards, you know, drag queen story hours or transitioning kids or any of that gender dysphoria, okay? So I like that. That's important to me, right? She can be an Ann Silver Democrat because I like Ann Silver and she is a Democrat and I like how what she does and where she comes from. And I think Tammy Westergaard is probably the same type of personality, same type of Democrat, right? It would kind of bother me though, because I'm sitting from over there and you're asking the questions and she's looking down at the piece of paper and I'm wondering, did she get the questions beforehand? Because that's what it appeared like to me. She didn't really give details in her responses either, so that bothers me as well. I'm pretty, you know, I was looking, so I'm disappointed in her interview, honestly. But out of the three we got to choose from, she's the best one, right? So ideally, I would like you to go back to the other candidates and interview them. Let's see what is out there. You're taking the word from somebody you've never even met. Have you met Melinda? What are her values? George Lee is right. You're taking the word from somebody you've never met, right? Doesn't make no sense. And the references, background checks, it's the cart before the horse. You're wasting people's time if their references and their backgrounds don't check out. It don't make no sense to me. Go back to the drawing board. Let's look at the other ones, please. At least look at them. So we know what we're up against. This is your one and only opportunity to do this right. Do it right. You have the opportunity right now. They don't have to bring back the other two by flight. Just bring back the other ones. Let's look at them all. Meet and greet. Get the community input on this. Please. Thank you. Oh, and thank you. Trustee Rodriguez, I really appreciate your questions earlier. They were spot on. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Cummings Schmidt.
I must say that this was quite an interesting experience for me. Having gone through the interview process some number of years ago was entirely different. I had 2 days of rigorous exercises and community members' input, and it was a totally different experience. But this is now, that was then. The one thing that did worry me a bit, and I have a disclaimer. I am one of Tammy Westergaard's references. And when I heard today that the references had not been checked, I was really quite surprised. And I thought, well, I thought that was just a matter of form, just automatic. And I must say that I am very distressed that no one knew then that I had been one of the references for one of the candidates. And that's a bit disturbing to me. And I do think that we have heard from 3 excellent candidates. They have different strengths, they have different personalities, but they are excellent candidates. And I do think the vetting was well done. And I do think that a decision could be made today. With that said, perhaps I should be put out to pasture finally.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other public comments, I would suggest well, let me ask my colleagues, could we have a break? I don't know how long we're interested in having a break. I do not want it to change the mood or decrease the activity level or the energy level. I also don't want to distress the public by having to leave and come back. Mr. Solero, are you asking to make a comment?
Thank you, Chair. For the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager. Leave this up to you all completely on what you would like to do next. I did want to let you know that Human Resources has let me know that if you do want to take a break, please make it long enough so that you can have some lunch. through that process. It is available. I know Julie had mentioned it would be here at 12, but the decision on what we do next is completely up to you. I just wanted to inject that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slayer. Do I have comments from my fellow trustees?
I'm okay with deliberation.
Can we,
For the record, I'm okay, Vice Chair Moser, I'm okay with deliberation.
Trustee Ruff?
Trustee Ruff, for the record, I'm fine with deliberating as well.
Trustee Jacks?
I think we need to take all the interview notes in. I've got quite a lot going on up here. I think a lunch break would be advantageous for this board to make this big decision. Maria, I think, shaking her head.
Trustee Rodriguez, for the record, I agree with Trustee Jacks because it is almost noon. I don't think we can get a whole lot done in the 6 minutes, and I think it will kind of leave us in a strange place that we need to come back to.
I also agree. I would like time. I'm not so concerned about eating, but I took a lot of notes and I would like to read them and reflect on them. So seeing that there are at least 3 of us who would like to take 30 minutes, we don't need a full hour. We don't need to inconvenience the public to any great length. But I believe that some time to review our notes or making we are at a pivotal point this afternoon or almost this afternoon. So I would like to take that break and convene in 30, where's the clock? Oh, it's 11:55. If we could convene in 30 minutes, that would be very helpful. That would make it 12:25. Thank you. Hope everyone had a break and an opportunity to reflect. I know I read my notes. All right, where's my agenda? Excuse me one moment. Agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action to consider the following top candidates: Lisa McClure, Caprice Roberson, and Tammy Westergaard for the vacant Washoe County Library Director position pursuant to NRS 379.025.1B inclusive, including interviewing the top candidates, selection of the library director, and possible direction to staff regarding the negotiation of an employment contract. This is for possible action. So if the Washoe County Human Resources professionals could give us guidance on our next step in the process, I would appreciate that. Thank you. Someone pass these down.
Good afternoon.
Hang on. Go ahead, please.
It's okay. I think this is on. Is it on? Okay. Good afternoon, Patricia Hurley from Human Resources. The process will be, my colleague is coming to you now. We'll be passing out a ballot to each of you. What you will do is you can choose your top candidate. She'll then gather the ballot and she'll bring them to me and I will read out each of your names and then who you voted for. The person with the most vote, of course, is the most successful candidate.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Moser, just for clarification, are we able to still deliberate or are we just casting a vote?
I think I'm gonna pass that one over to Herb Kaplan on that word deliberate.
So, I mean, you could do either way. If you want to just take a vote initially, or if you want to have discussion. I know in the beginning of the meeting, there was some concern about the number of candidates that were brought forward. And if there's discussion on that issue, whether we go forward at all at this point, or regarding the candidates, I mean, you could have deliberation regarding the candidates if you like.
What if we substitute the word discussion for deliberation? Is there any discussion among my colleagues before we vote?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, if you're calling for discussion. Trustee Jacks, for the record, I just, had worked and prepared some questions for candidates, especially respective to maybe their travel or their experience or employment, salaries and things like that. Certain questions, I know, we had those prepared ones, but as far as the voting and the process, I'm gonna leave it to the leadership of this board, who I appreciate the chair and vice chair very much. I think that we gave the candidates their due respect and interview for the process. And while this board takes full responsibility for the consulting firm, for the logistics of how we ended up here today, I think the board also has the right to give itself direction and to make educated decisions on a broader pool of possible employees. And I think a lot of this, though, has been pushed through on a swift timeline. I'm not saying we should have taken it any slower, but I think we're up against a timeline for that strategic plan. So where they're looking for us for certain deadlines, we're trying to move on a fast track deadline. We've been working without a director for a year, but we're hiring librarians and we're doing all sorts of other things irrelevant of, trying to rush this through. So if the board sees fit to call for the vote at this point, hopefully we can have more discussion. I think the local candidate offers, a slight preference over traveling candidates from out of the area. I think it is interesting that we only had one local candidate brought forward to us. I'm not sure if any other local candidates had applied, but we would have liked to seen that pool. So that's all the discussion I have at this point. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Other trustees? Trustee Rodriguez?
Trustee Rodriguez, I would like to thank all of the candidates for coming in this morning and doing such a wonderful job at interviewing. Definitely looking at their resumes and how they answer the questions are all very strong candidates. I do want to make a point, though, it's been brought out about having only one local candidate. As somebody who has relocated 3 times in her life for a job, I don't think we should discount that in any way when considering who we're going to choose. Because the first time I relocated, I did not go back to where I came from. So that to me should not bear any kind of weight on this. And just the point of remembering what an important decision this is, because libraries is all about defending the intellectual freedom of individuals and their rights to information. And to the work that we do here and the decision we make here today is so important for our entire community.
Thank you. Other comments? My colleagues, Trustee Rupp.
Trustee Ruff, for the record, is that on? I'm sorry, it's hard to see if that's on. I feel confident that the 3 candidates that we had today, and I do thank them as well for coming in today and for giving us their answers and their perspective on the profession of being a librarian. And for me, I felt like there was really one candidate that stood out and had a breadth of information for every question. And I think really demonstrated her ability to use humor and use her strengths in building a strategic plan and building bridges, not just with staff, whom I know we love our staff and they are the best librarians in the country, but also with our community that I know really wants that too. And I just really feel like our first candidate, Lisa, it would be the candidate for me that with her breadth of information and understanding, really, I think stands out as a person who is, I think, the person who can lead us forward.
I would just like to make a comment, Trustee Silver, for the record, Chair Silver. I think, hindsight is everything. Do I think we had hard work done by the Washoe County Human Resources Department, vetting the firm, using a firm that has been used by Washoe County before. I am left with a number of concerns, one being And perhaps to Ms. Tibbetts' point, it was an assumption. I assumed there were references. I don't know of any letters that were attached to any of the resumes. I didn't receive any letters attached in support of any candidates. But I do think seeing the questions for the first time was a bit disturbing. And I don't know at what point in time the candidates saw the questions and if they were given them before or a long period before, or because several of them were reading their answers. So perhaps you could answer that for me?
Trisha Hurley, again, for the record, they were given 15 minutes before their interview.
I'm sorry, 15 minutes before the interview.
They got
Okay.
the questions.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's somewhat news to me, so I will take complete responsibility for making some assumptions, which was that not only were references and letters of recommendation, or whatever you want to call them, were submitted, but that the questions would not be a surprise to the trustees. Given that, I know there is a distinct appetite to select an individual today. Whether we think we have the breadth of candidates or as large a number of candidates as we would have liked to see, it is what it is. And we had someone drop out just shortly before this process. So I would like to see us go forward with our own individual ballots. And then I guess they're tallied by Human Resources. If you could address that, Patricia.
Yes, they would, Trisha Hurley, again, for the record, yes, they would be tallied. So if there's clearly three that vote for the same person, there is your top candidate.
And is there, so that is just what it is. It's done purely by the numbers.
Yep.
Okay. And so we rank 1, 2, and 3?
Nope,
Their
you
names?
just put, what you do on your vote right now is you will rank, you'll just give me your top candidate.
Okay.
If we end up with a tie, I will tell you what to do after
Okay.
that. To
Thank
not
you.
confuse the issue.
Any other comments before we each, please go ahead.
Trustee Moser, for the record, I just want to thank all the candidates and the public for being here today. I do really appreciate the effort in preparing and the public that's been with us for 3.5 years now through this entire process in the last year of this whole deliberation about how to get a new director. And so with that being said, though, I did want to tell the public my choice for a vote. And similar to what Tammy Ruff said, I know all of the candidates are equally on paper amazing, but the breadth of what was stated today hit every point in detail. And so not only did I understand the individual's character and nature and heart, but their timeline, their strategy, their person-centered perspective. And so I will be putting in a vote today for Lisa, but I do appreciate everyone for applying. And I'm very grateful for the applicants into CPS and HR.
Chair, for the record,
Please.
Trustees Jackson. Some of the questions I did want to ask the applicants, if we had given the opportunity, was, kind of, did you spend some time in this area? Did you tour any of the libraries while you were here? Little things like that, that I know makes it hard to relocate and get in on time to do all that. I think having somebody local who knows the area has probably seen every library and can attest to the real local issues, would be someone advantageous for this board to consider. And I could have alluded to some more questions at the time, but I'll turn it over to the board without further delay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Trustee Jacks, if I could just respond by saying I hope we will all give equal and commensurate consideration to people who do not currently live here. I arrived from somewhere else, maybe others have, and like Trustee Rodriguez, I took a job and moved 3,000 miles away and could not spend significant time in a community. But with that said, I understand that candidate Westergaard is with us and lives in Carson, I believe, or knows our community. So I do understand your comment, but I would hope we would all give consideration to those who have expressed tremendous interest in working for the Washoe County Library System. With that, if we're prepared, everyone would complete their ballot and turn them in. Do we take a break at this point, or do you literally do this right in front of us?
Shirley, for the record, I literally do this right in
Great.
front of you.
Fully transparent.
Fully transparent. So I just wanted to kind of get this in a little bit of an order. So we will start with Chair Silver, Lisa McClure. Vice Chair Moser, Lisa McClure. Trustee Ruff, Lisa McClure. And Trustee Jacks, Tammy Westergaard. Trustee Rodriguez, Caprice Roberson. So it seems like, if I can do my math correctly, we do have a candidate, and that would be Ms. McClure. Thank you.
We need to take possible action to provide direction to the staff regarding the negotiation of an employment contract. Is there a motion to give staff the opportunity to work with Ms. McClure on an employment contract? Is there a motion?
Sorry, Madam Chair, Trustee Ruff, for the record, I move that we advance the name of Lisa McClure to the HR department for further discussions and contract for the library director of Washoe County Library System.
Vice Chair Moser, second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed? No one opposing, so we are giving direction to staff, whomever that may be. I assume Patricia and Dave Solero, to begin the negotiation of an employment contract for Lisa McClure. Let me move on to item number 8, staff announcements. No discussion or action may be taken upon any matter raised under this comment section until the matter has been specifically included on an agenda. Any staff announcements? Hearing none, I will declare this meeting adjourned.